Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Thursday, April 16th, 2026. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA, and from the bowels of one of the poshest hotels, the Las Vegas Strip conference areas, for the Mass Torts 2026 conference, wherein I will be interviewing trial lawyers on different tort cases that exist. And of course, also on the program today, U.S. Navy has blocked 13 ships from Iranian ports in its non-blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, a jury finds Ticketmaster and Live Nation to be an illegal monopoly. This, despite the Department of Justice dropping out of the suit. Democrats make a shift on weapons for Israel. New Jersey special election today, New Jersey 11. That's Emma's home district.
Yes, go out for Mejia.
Tulsi Gabbard attempting to criminalize the whistleblower and watchdog whose evidence led to the Trump impeachment. The second one, I believe. Trump, meanwhile, is in Vegas today, touting his reduced taxes on tips and reduced taxes on overtime pay. No word if he will make it for an interview today. Report at least 88 top profitable corporations, U.S. corporations, paid $0 in federal income tax in 2025. House Democrats introduced articles of impeachment versus Pete Hegseth. 6 counts: the illegal war in Iran, the murders of people in boats in the Caribbean, his failed use of a non-authorized app, Signal, preventing oversight for government abuse of power. Number 6, he brought disrepute to the armed services. And if you wanted to add a 7th, it could be not knowing fact from Pulp Fiction. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Thank you. Oh, yes, right? I made that up on the fly, actually. I hadn't even thought about that.
Hello, Sam.
Hello, Emma. I am, once again, let me do this here just for the time being, and then I will switch it back when a guest is here. I am in Las Vegas, Nevada, as I often do once or twice a year, to catch up with trial lawyers who are bringing, it's not quite class action lawsuits, but similarly structured lawsuits against corporations for corporate malfeasance. And at times I run into other type of cases as well that we talk about. Today, we're going to be talking about tariffs. We're going to be talking about opioids, see where the status of that is. We're going to be talking about a medical device problem that I want to say it's close to my heart, but it's actually close to other parts of my body. And we'll be talking about talc. Yes, you'll understand.
I'm concerned now.
Oh yeah, that one is
Suspense
going
is
to be
killing me.
That one's going to be gross.
The Swedish penis bump lawsuit.
Well, it's not Swedish, but anyways, we will get into that in just moments. In the meantime, here is this is big news in the Senate. The number of senators who are voting against some type of weapons support for Israel has, in at least one instance, doubled. There was both a vote for bulldozers to Israel. And of course, all of this it's symbolic on some level, but it's also indicative of like where the Democratic Party is going to be if they get into power. It sets parameters for them. 40 senators voted against providing bulldozers for Israel. There were 7 that were not. You could probably guess the 7.
I can list them. I wrote it down if you'd like.
Let's see if I can do it off the top of my head.
Okay.
Chuck Schumer.
Oh, yeah.
Voting against 85% of his caucus and against the majority of the Democratic Party. Kristen Gillibrand.
Both of our senators from this great state of blue New York.
For some reason, both senators from Nevada, Masto and Jackie Rosen, I do not know what that is. I'm trying to figure that out. Also, of course, John Fetterman, who literally wants to drive one there himself or something, but I think he's lost his license. Chris Coons.
Yep.
Who is who was probably the closest to Biden. Yes. Yep. And is that 7?
You got 6. The Blumenthal of Connecticut.
Oh,
is
Blumenthal
the other.
of Connecticut.
No, not both Connecticut, just one. And then 36 Democrats voted to block bombs. So that was the vote. 40 out of 47 voted to block those bulldozers, which, by the way, have been used to bulldoze homes in the West Bank, but also critically like level Rafah. And I think that they play a critical role in genocide evidence the covering up of the evidence there. They're just destroying people's bodies and paving over the bodies there. But the 36 Senate Democrats that voted to block that voted against blocking bombs, the ones that voted for blocking the bulldozers but not bombs, were Gary Peters, Jack Reed, Mark Warner, and Sheldon Whitehouse.
All right, let's play this clip. Senator Van Hollen on the Senate floor yesterday.
War. Now, colleagues, I want to focus for a moment on the portion of the Sanders resolution that bans the transfer of bulldozers to the IDF. These are the bulldozers that helped raise Rafah in Gaza to the ground. And for those who don't remember, I asked them to recall the case of Rachel Corrie, a 23-year-old American peace activist who was killed by an Israeli bulldozer trying to block the razing of buildings in Rafah over 20 years ago. Rachel Corrie has never gotten any justice, and her family will tell you that today. In fact, just since January of 2022, at least 9 more American citizens have been killed by extremist Israeli settlers or security forces in the West Bank. And not one of them, not one, has gotten justice. Just like Rachel Corrie, no accountability. Now, Mr. President,
there's a piece in The Nation by Rachel Corrie's mother, Cindy. Let's finally do something about the bulldozer that killed my daughter. Rachel Corrie was an American peace activist who was killed in 2003 when she was trying to protect a Palestinian home from being leveled by these very Caterpillar D9 bulldozers that were the subject of that bill that Bernie Sanders introduced. And to your point, Sam, in July 2025, Bernie also had a resolution that was aimed at blocking a certain transfer of weapons and materials to Israel, and it only got 27 votes. So we've gone from 27 to both 36 on the weapons, on the 1,000-pound bombs, and 40 on the bulldozers, and no Republicans. So I just want to point that out because perhaps it's being a little bit overinflated, the fact that there are media figures on the conservative side that are being critical of Israel's genocide, but there is no actual meaningful constituency in Washington that's implementing it.
Exactly. And that's the important part, is that at the end of the day, it's not just your voting. I mean, and this change is indicative of it. I don't think it's that twice as many senators became sort of more morally righteous or something. Right. I think what this is a function of they're responding to their constituents. And when you vote for a politician, you are also voting, if not primarily, at least significantly, you're voting for who is going to be influencing this politician. In part, that is often, big money and donors and whatnot, but also in part, it is other constituents. And so you vote where you have the best opportunity to change how the politicians are functioning. I mean, that is an important thing to keep in mind. It does not matter if there is one politician in a party that otherwise has absolutely no desire to move in that direction. And it does not matter if there is a conservative media figures who are essentially, taking this position, but are unable to move any of the Republican constituents. And so that's the important thing to keep in mind.
Yes, and it's also notable that we have a Republican president who, his budget that he's introducing, as Lindsey Graham is salivating over it when they're debating it in the Senate, is a $1.5 trillion slush fund for the military-industrial complex. That was the Republican president already in the last budget increased the Pentagon budget by the highest percentage that it had been in, either ever or years. And Trump is trying to do to give them even more money. So that they're captured by the military-industrial complex, and it doesn't matter if you have conservative influencers that are saying this kind of thing when that's where the levers of power are.
All right, and in a moment, we're going to start some interviews, but the first one is going to be about tariffs. As you know, the Supreme Court ruled that Trump's tariffs under the IEEP, is that what it is? The EPA, basically the emergency international IEPA, Emergency International Powers Act, Economic Powers Act. And Trump issued something like close to $200 billion worth of tariffs. And now the government has to give those back. The process starts soon, but I've got some bad news for you if you are not a corporation or an importer that paid those tariffs. They were passed on to you in many instances, but you will not be getting that money back. But here is Scott Besson explaining, we'll see what happens.
So that's the amount who have already requested refunds. So they are already in the chute, and we'll see what the timeline is for that.
Will that affect the U.S. economy, all of those refunds coming out of the U.S. Treasury?
We'll have to see what comes out. and we'll have to see what the companies do with them. Just to be clear, thanks to the Supreme Court, some of this money is going back to China. So is that going to affect the U.S. economy? I don't know.
So there's Scott Bessant saying, thanks to the Supreme Court. Well, really what it is thanks to American law, and it would have never been taken in the first place if it was legal. And that's basically saying, like, if it wasn't for those cops catching that bank robber and putting the money back into the bank, guys who you don't like, who have bank accounts there, that's why they're getting the money. And of course, that money is spent 5 times over at this point. That most of that money was already spent, I think, at this point with the Iran war. But
I missed that part of the Supreme Court ruling where they said that you got to send this money back to China. Like,
it's got to go to China.
It's got to go to China. I mean, that's what the conservatives on the Supreme Court mandated. He's just lying. He's just completely lying.
And in a moment, we're going to be talking to someone about those tariffs, and we'll see how much of that money is going back to China. First, a word from our sponsor. Did you know Fast Growing Trees is America's largest and most trusted online nursery with thousands of trees and plants and over 2 million happy customers? I knew that. I have been one of those happy customers for over a decade. I was a customer before they became sponsors of this program. Why? Because they have all the plants your yard or your home needs, including fruit trees, privacy trees, shade trees, flowering trees, shrubs, long grasses. They're all grown with care and guaranteed to arrive healthy. It's like your local nursery, but anywhere you live, with more plants than you'll find anywhere else. Doesn't matter what you're looking for. Fast Growing Trees helps you find options that actually work for your climate, space, and lifestyle. Fast Growing Trees makes it easy to get your dream yard. You click, you grow, you order, you grow, and you get healthy, thriving plants delivered right to your door. That means no more dirt spilling out in the back of your Subaru. It means no more going to a big box store and getting 2 different types of apple variations that are some of the worst apple variations that are around. It's actually coming from a nursery where people care about the plants. They have an Alive and Thrive guarantee. It promises your plants arrive happy and healthy. No green thumb required, just quality plants you can count on. And you can get ongoing support. They have plant experts there that'll help you, like, is this the right one for your zone? Is this the right one? Where in your yard should you put it? It needs more shade. It needs less shade. What kind of soil does it need? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I can tell you, check out the bloomerangs if they still got them. Those are lilac plants that are trees, little, like, sort of bushy trees that bloom twice a year, both in May and then again in July. They're very cool. Right now, they have great deals on spring planting essentials, up to half off select plants. Our audience gets 20% off your first purchase when you use the code majority at checkout. That's an additional 20% off. Better plants and better growing at fastgrowingtrees.com. Use the code majority at checkout, fastgrowingtrees.com. Code is majority. Now is the perfect time to plant. Let's grow together. Use majority to save today. Offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. All right, let's take a quick break. I will reset my camera here. And when we come back, we're going to be talking to a series of attorneys here at the Mass Torts Conference on an array of torts. And then later in the program, we'll have more news. All right, so quick break. We'll be right back. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Emma Vigeland is back in studio. I am live at the Mass Torts Conference. Sitting with me now is Glenn Ged. He's an attorney at Levin Papantonio. And Glenn, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having
me. We were just playing a clip from Scott Bessant, who was explaining that the Supreme Court has basically forced us to give a bunch of money to China for absolutely no reason. This, of course, is a function of Donald Trump's tariffs being found to be illegal, essentially, under his IEPA powers. So walk us through this. What is IEPA and what are these tariffs that we're talking about?
So IEPA is the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. Basically what it says is that during a time of national emergency, a president can impose certain regulations on trade. Now it says can regulate trade. It doesn't say can impose tariffs. It doesn't say can impose taxes, which is what the Supreme Court has equated it to tariffs. And you also have to declare a national emergency under the National Emergencies Act. So here, what had happened in April of 2025, President Donald Trump essentially said that we are in a trade emergency, and he declared a national emergency, allegedly, or attempted to declare a national emergency, and said that now I have the power, President Donald Trump, have the power to impose tariffs all across the board. Now, there were many different tariffs that he imposed. The IEPA tariffs, so the International Emergency Economic Powers Act tariffs, were the statute that were found to be unconstitutional by the Supreme Court on February 20th of this year, and I'll discuss that in a moment. But there were also several other tariffs that President Trump had imposed under sections 201, 232, 301 for national security, unfair trade practices, and whatnot. Those tariffs are still in place right now. We are seeing emerging litigations on those tariffs, but they're structured a little differently. The acts are structured a little differently when Congress imposed them. Now back to the IEPA tariffs, what we're talking about. Essentially what had happened was President Trump released a series of executive orders starting in April of 2025, and then some other tariffs as well starting his first presidency. Now, the IEPA tariffs in April of 2025 were the ones that were of issue. What had happened was he releases the executive order saying we're putting tariffs on basically all countries across the world, starting off with a reciprocal tariff of 10% and now compounding for if you've done business with Iran, or if you're trading with Russia, or if you're trading with China, if you're trading with India, or any of their
Prime
partners.
Minister made fun of me.
Exactly.
And
it changed by the day. It wasn't, it was fluid, is to say the least, and a new frontier is definitely, to say the least. President Trump was tweeting or posting on X and as well as his social media accounts saying that, oh, I'm changing these tariffs, I'm doing this, I'm imposing this. Quite literally, it was changing by the day. Just like you said, someone made fun of me, I don't like it.
Did the irrationality of all that contribute to a finding like this is not an emergency? If it was, like, you wouldn't be willy-nilly doing this, you would be addressing the so-called emergency.
So when the Supreme Court on February 20th released the opinion for the case, they didn't exactly get a lot into they discussed that, it was changing by day and whatnot. But what they really focused on, what the majority opinion really focused on was there was no national emergency declared. So starting off, the statute would become inapplicable just off the bat. Now the question leads to, well, what can the president do with the IEPA statute, with the International Emergency Economic Powers Act? Congress has not released any additional notes about what they meant to say or what they had intended. But the Supreme Court rationed that regulate trade does not equal impose tariffs. If they wanted to say that, they would have said impose taxes, and they've equated taxes to tariffs. The Supreme Court also referenced the Sugar Act and the Paper Act all the way back the precipice of the American Revolution. Because there was no national emergency, or no valid national emergency, and B, the statute just did not allow for tariffs to be imposed, essentially there was no basis for these tariffs to be imposed. Now, in the Supreme Court's opinion on February 20th of this year, they said, well, now you have to refund all the money. You have to refund it back to the importers, because the importers, the American importers, are the ones that suffer from the tariffs. Those are the ones that pay the tariffs. There are, obviously, it trickles down like crazy to the consumer. The consumer is paying, and that's what's happening when the FedEx MDL now.
Why is China getting all this money?
So I think there's kind of conflations there. The refunds are sent back to the consumer, the importer, essentially.
Are you suggesting that Scott Bessant is saying without basis that Supreme Court is sending money to China and they're...
I'm not saying that the Supreme Court's sending money anywhere. The Supreme Court just said, look, this is unconstitutional. We can't do anything with this. I think there's a conflation there. It's the importers of record, the American importers, that pay the tariffs, and those are the ones that are getting the refunds. Now, there are also international importers, Chinese companies based in the United States that may be getting those refunds as well. But it's not really directed towards China, towards one specific. Now, we don't know what President Trump's going to do next. He could say, send this money to China. He could say whatever he wants. Now it's a matter of what's legal, what's constitutional.
Right.
And we see him tweeting saying, I'm replacing income tax with tariffs. The Supreme Court said, no, you're not with these ones.
Okay, so I think Scott Bessant may have been conflating things on purpose, and it's quite possible that there is, although it's just impossible for me to imagine that anybody from this administration would lie in any way about
I'm not suggesting that he lied. There may be some other...
Oh, I'm suggesting.
Okay.
Yes, I know it's uncomfortable maybe for you to suggest that, but I am suggesting he lied. But that would not be the first time for Scott Bessant, and it is not a crime to lie to the American public. It happens quite a bit. Okay, so there's like $170 billion or so?
Yeah, there's about $330 billion in total on tariffs that were collected. About $175 billion, more than that, were from the IEEPA tariffs.
Okay.
Those that are being refunded.
And so this could all be automatic, right?
Exactly.
It's like, okay, you shouldn't have collected this money. You know exactly who you took it from because you have records. That's how you took it in the first place.
Exactly.
And so all the checks are going out, right? And that's it.
Not quite yet. So there's a few stages that are now in place now. So when the Supreme Court issued their opinion, they didn't say anything about how the tariffs would be refunded. So the Court of International Trade has exclusive jurisdiction. They're up in New York City. They have exclusive jurisdiction over all trade-related matters in the U.S. Now, what they have done is Judge Richard Eaton, originally in the Atmos filtration case and now in the Euronations Florida case, has really been pushing the automatic refunds. So Customs and Border Protection has a system already set up called the Automated Customs Environment, ACE. Now, what they do in ACE is that's where they submit all of their entry paperwork, their entry summaries. I'm bringing this into the U.S. This is what I'm bringing. This is how much it's valued at. And if they need to amend it, they do everything in there. And if prior to the tariffs, if they needed to contest something or protest, they would do it through there. Now, if that was denied, if the protest was denied there, then you would do a reliquidation in the Court of International Trade. But what has happened here is even before the Supreme Court had issued their opinion saying that these tariffs were unconstitutional and illegal, importers of record were lining up and filing suit in the Court of International Trade, preserving their rights for their refunds, should the Supreme Court rule. Now what has happened was in between February 20th and now, Judge Richard Eaton in the Court of International Trade has really been pushing this automatic refund. So the Customs has released what's called the Consolidated Administration and Processing of Entries, so CAPE. CAPE is in the ACE platform now, and they're rolling it out in 4 different phases. So what CAPE is essentially a claims portal for importers of record to submit their claims for the entries that are subject to the IEEPA refund.
Why should they have to do that when the government already knows who got it?
Well, the alternative there was suing in the Court of International Trade, and then attorneys would get attorneys' fees and whatnot.
Right, I see. Okay.
So,
this just makes it an administrative process.
It's pushed
But
toward.
you've sued, correct?
So I'm licensed in the Court of International Trade. We've been prepping these actions for quite some time. I've been working with a lot of experts, a lot of importers on what are the next steps.
Will you have to sue, or will CAPE take care of it?
Now, that's going to depend on what happens next month. So the government has until May 4th to appeal the opinion that says you have to roll out this CAPE system. Now, I think it's going to be, personally, I think it's going to be a midnight appeal. They're going to submit it the day before just so that they can drag this on as much as possible.
Right.
Now, the government, Customs, has a 5-year right of look back. So essentially, I'm an importer of record. I submit my data's paperwork or my entry summary. I get all of it. It's all good. Everything's in the U.S. and I'm the importer. I'm done. For 5 years after that happens, Customs has the right to reopen that case and basically say, well, did you lie about what you were bringing in? Did you lie about the valuation? And if you did originally misstate it, did you submit an amendment? Did you submit a post-summary correction, it's called?
So if I hear you correctly, A, the government appeals this, it'll be a way of punting it probably past the midterm elections, because they're very nervous about the idea of stories saying the Treasury has to give back $180 billion.
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking.
The B position for them after they do A is then we could start to try and harass the importers who ask for stuff by looking back and going like, hey, on April 14th, 2022, you had a shipment of TVs come in and you said 45 TVs and there were actually 40, and they could just harass them.
Well,
to make it more difficult to get their.
I'm weary, just in my position, to use the word harass, but they could do essentially whatever they want in reopening that case. Just like you said you brought 40, not 45 televisions, and that's what they've really been using as a way to delay this process. They've been telling the government has been telling the Court of International Trade, look, well, we have this right. How are we going to audit all these cases in X amount of time? And Judge Richard Eaton, who is very direct and to the point, said, well, you have until April to do so. And now already on April 20th, Customs and Border Protection is going to be rolling out that CAPE process. The refunds are going back to the importers of record. So those that have actually imported and were on the hook for Customs and Border Protection for those tariffs. Now, where are we going with this in the future? Again, it is a whole new frontier. There was a motion to consolidate for a multi-district litigation. So there was a motion for the Judicial Panel of Multi-District Litigation, the JPML, on March 10th of this year for the fees that FedEx, the company Federal Express, was charging those that were just receiving packages. And this was after the Supreme Court decision. So even after the Supreme Court said
they kept charging. Okay.
Exactly.
Now, in many of these instances, the fees were passed on to the consumer.
Yeah.
And what would you put the likelihood of consumers seeing a single dollar from those?
I mean, do I think that the right thing, do I know that the right thing to do is for these companies to somehow reimburse the consumer, to somehow, lower their prices or offer free things? Yes. The consumers have been harmed beyond belief. It doesn't take an attorney or journalists to look around and see all of the closing out of business signs. Right. You go on Instagram, you see ads, the tariffs have put us out of business. I think that there should be some retribution for that. Now, do I think it's going to happen is another question. We sue corporations all day, all night. We know how the American corporate system works. Unless there is a law saying that Congress is passing, which I don't see the likelihood of that, saying you have to do this. And even then, they'll try and fight it. So I don't think that corporations are going to, generally, for the most part, are going to have the good enough will to say, hey, consumer, you were wrong.
TLDR, the too long don't read, is consumers are going to get zero. Now, I would imagine there's a good opportunity for some politicians who want to raise this issue as a political matter to try and raise legislation. I don't anticipate it would pass. All right. So one other question I have for you. So we'll have a better sense of this come May when the deadline for an appeal happens. If the appeal happens, this all gets punted.
We continue pushing forward.
What about those guys? Now, I know that Uday and Kusei Lutnick have claimed that they did not buy these coupons, essentially to buy the right to recapture these tariffs in the event that the Supreme Court found what they did.
Exactly.
And they bought them on 20 or 30 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
They claim they didn't do this. I don't believe them, but certainly people have. Where are they in this? Do you run into them in the halls of
I run into them quite a good bit,
because they're fighting for this payback too, because they own the rights to collect.
Exactly. So essentially, just to kind of recap what had happened, companies are saying, okay, well, we don't know before the Supreme Court's decision. Okay, we don't know if we're going to be able to get this refund. We'll sell it to someone, or a hedge fund, someone over here for 30 cents on the dollar, 20 cents on the dollar, saying, if you can recover, here's the right to recover. Just give us the money and we'll be fine. Now, what's happening is now they have the right to recover. So now they can bring these actions in the Court of International Trade, bring it in CAPE, and say, okay, I've been owed the money. I've been given this right of refund. Now, there's a back and forth on how the CAPE platform is going to structure that. So right now, the CAPE platform is only for importers of record. You have to show that you're the importer of record. But like you said, all these hedge funds and all these people out here, whether they admit it or not, were purchasing the right of a refund. So that's going to be another development in the Court of International Trade, and it really changes day by day, hour by hour.
Is it possible that that court could say, you didn't have a right to sign this?
I mean, what's possible is infinite. I don't see that happening. I think that the court is going to say, okay, you purchased the right for a refund. We'll figure out how we would go about that. Maybe it's not the first wave,
or a legal assignee.
And maybe that's not the first wave. Phase 1, like I said, is rolling out in April 20th of this year, of this month. Maybe that gets pushed back later. But the best thing to do right now, if you haven't submitted, if you haven't been submitting an action, file your action in the Court of International Law. Reach out to Levin Papantonio, us, and other law firms that are doing these actions. Preserve your rights in the Court of International Trade, whether a automatic refund happens or not. As long as you preserve your right, you file suit, you bring the action, the Court of International Trade has said that your rights will be preserved.
Great.
Well, you, the importer.
Glenn Ged from Levin Papantonio, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me. This was a pleasure.
All right, folks. And I think we're going to roll right into our next one. We have another attorney from Levin Papantonio. Yeah, here he is, sitting down with me.
Good
Peter
morning.
Mougey. Nice to see you again. Here, why don't you go to that two-shot, Matt? Peter Mougey, you're from Levin Papantonio. We've spoken many times over the years, maybe the past 10, 15 years that I've been coming to this conference. And you used to focus on you, one of the few lawyers out there who part of an organization, I say maybe the only organization that was advocating on behalf of people in the wake of the financial crisis.
Yes.
And what happened to pensions and in particular, and
mom and pop investors at Main Street, everything from folks that work their entire lives to put money away, went to a financial advisor or a firm for advice and received terrible advice, up to pension systems that are investing, hundreds of millions of dollars into a particular space. Still practice in that area, but it's been 20 years. We've handled thousands of cases in that space. Very, very rewarding. I've really enjoyed that. Makes you get up in the morning to feel like you're making a real impact on people's lives that have been devastated.
Well, structurally speaking, were there any changes that came out of that stuff?
Oh, absolutely. We've made a sea change from when I started in this space in the late 90s on the regulatory side. Part of what I did over a course of almost 2 decades, I was president of the National Securities Bar for a few years. I served on the board of directors for more than a decade. And quite frankly, we were a nothing, a nobody, non-existent. We're even at the table. And over the years, we have become a dominant force in dealing with the SEC, FINRA, the state regulators, where we were an active participant in how regulations are written, how we go to Congress more than, I think, 2-3 times a year, meet with congressmen, senators from around the country on legislation that's either being proposed or written. We've had a real impact on how the way business is done. And obviously, some of that's been walked back over the last few years, but and quite frankly, I think we're going to end up seeing more problems down the line because of the relaxed legislation, but we've made some huge differences.
All right. And then subsequent to that, you were working a lot on the opioid cases.
Yes.
Give us, I mean, some of this is sort of old news on some level, but catch us up. Like there were multiple different sort of parties that needed to be compensated for the opioid crisis. And there were multiple different players who were responsible for that opioid crisis. Just give us a sense of those two sort of like.
So you'd have to be hiding under a rock at this point not to know that there's an opiate epidemic that started in the late 90s with Purdue, with a sea change of marketing on how we treat pain. And for hundreds of years, rightfully so, people were scared of opiates. They're highly addictive. You can go in for an injury. You can take your high school kid in that plays football and he has an acute pain because of a broken ankle. And the longer you stay on opiates, the higher the likelihood that you're addicted. The oversupply in our communities caused a huge epidemic where people, regular people, mom and pop, regular kids migrated to heroin and fentanyl. And you saw what we call a mountain, a steep slope of users, deaths. Leading cause of death in the United States in 2010 was opiate overdoses. So our communities were devastated because of all the opiates and the oversupply. So we started to represent cities and counties and states, which seems like a kind of an odd step for me with my financial background, but I already had this huge client base that were asking about what can we do with this opiate epidemic.
Oh, folks who at city, like municipal pension funds and stuff like that?
Actually, no, it was actually the one step above. It was the city, counties. We used to deal with the pension systems, but now we actually represent the city and county, which are typically two different kind of entities under the same umbrella. But just simple terms like ambulance runs, overdoses, having to pick people up, take them in. All those costs were borne by taxpayers in our communities, and the communities didn't know what to do with it. So how do you clean up the mess with all of these folks that were addicted? How do you get them treatment? How do we stop this epidemic, which every year deaths up? Our life expectancy in the United States actually went down because of opiate overdoses. So just now, I'll take large credit for the work that we've done as a group in this opiate space, that we've now got the amount of pills back to where we were in the early 2000s. Still have work to do, but we've turned that tide back.
And that is because all of the different sort of players, whether it was the manufacturers, doctors obviously have become more aware of that, there's nothing special about OxyContin or, or whatever it was that would keep you from getting addicted.
All the way through. Let's walk through that supply chain. So it's fascinating, really. And we started with that sea change in the late 90s with Purdue and front groups that were out pitching pain's undertreated. We've created a magic opiate that's not addictive. Addiction's rarely seen in opiate patients, and that started at that manufacturer level with Purdue. So the way our system works with opiates, because everybody knows they're highly addictive and very dangerous, Congress created in the 1970s a Controlled Substance Act. It's a closed system, a loop, so to speak. And so everybody in the system has to be registered with the DEA. So from manufacturers to distributors to pharmacies, then as you mentioned, doctors, which are the ones that write the script.
And PBMs too,
and you have PBMs, which is now the current hot litigation
Pharmacy
piece.
Benefit Management.
The largest companies no one's ever heard of. I mean, ESI, for example, based out of St. Louis, Missouri, 30,000 people, employees, a Fortune 100 company. My guess is 90% of your millions of followers don't even know who they are. Neither did I, quite frankly, when I started looking at this.
And in fact, I recently, and I can't remember whether it was in the House or the Senate, a lot of these insurance companies were brought up in front to testify, and they were asked, how many of you own an insurance company? How many of you own pharmacies?
Yes.
How many of you own pharmacy benefit managers who are
CVS is the poster child for the vertical integration. It's the proverbial fox guarding the hen house. And that closed system we were just talking about, every one of the participants in that closed system that are gatekeepers, so to speak, are supposed to have a system in place to look for outliers or red flags, high prescribers, patients that are receiving abnormal amounts, you name it. They're supposed to be watching in that closed system and have, we have so many sophisticated computers and algorithms and in checking and spotting where those red flags are, including the PBMs, which are the gatekeepers for this whole system. And they're the ones that adjudicate the claims, meaning they pay for the claims based on your insurance. So if you have Blue Cross Blue Shield, who's your PBM? It's typically Optum, which is a part of United Health, or ESI, or CVS.
And they, I think the most sort of egregious case, if I remember, was like one county in Kentucky, maybe, or it was West Virginia, that was getting more pills than there were people.
Oh, it's not even close. And quite frankly, you could, the list is hundreds of cities and counties that were receiving hundreds, if not thousands, of pills per capita. Quite frankly, the average in the United States, we created a database with my firm, Levin Papantonio, that we were responsible for, that we can track every pill from the manufacturer to the pharmacist to the pharmacy, the distributor that delivered it to the pharmacy, in many states, the doctors, and now with the PBM data, the claims data, we have the patients. Now, of course, we don't know patient names, they're de-identified, but I can track every pill from 2006 to 2024, where it went in the country. The average city and county in the United States, the average is 33 pills per cap in every city and county per month over the period of 15, 16 years. Think about that. That's 33. It's man, woman, child. In the population based, that's the average. And in some of these communities, it was got as high as over 100. And in some of the super small communities in rural Kentucky, West Virginia, Tennessee, Panhandle of Florida, Alabama, it kind of started in Appalachia, southern Ohio, they can get up over 100 pills per person, per man, woman, and child per month.
And were there obligations to various sellers, the PBMs or the pharmacies? Did they have an algorithm or something where it was like, hey, the average for this, it's high, 33 per capita, but in this area, it's 100 per capita. That's a problem. Like what was the nature of the mechanism that they would employ that they should have known was a red flag?
It didn't matter whether it was manufacturers, distributors, pharmacies, or PBMs. That all told Congress they had systems in place. They told their communities they had systems in place. They were window dressing, because every single one of these participants in this system made more money the more pills they were. PBMs, for example, told their clients, our interests are aligned with you. When you save money, we save money. That's BS. And they know it is. Their model is more pills, more money. So there's systems they had in place, whether it was a distributor. Think about this. We're going to flag it if it was 3 times higher than the average rolling 6 months. 3 times. I mean, that you can think about that over time. So if it was 2 times, that's 6 months. And the next 6 months, it was two times. And the next 6 months, it was 2 times. That's why you have this slope that the use of opiates in our country went up 700, 800, 900% in the early 2000s.
Oh, because it's not against the baseline.
Right.
You're comparing
previous 6 months
to the rate of increase.
Yes.
And so
like the PBM's flags was, hey, Sam, if you have more than 7 opiate prescriptions over 2 months with 3 doctors or 3 pharmacies. Well, what about the pill mill with the doctor that was writing scripts for money? That was just, the old adage, the weakest the weakest part of a chain is just one link. So as long as one link doesn't work, so if you have a pill mill that's writing scripts like crazy in exchange for cash and or using their insurance to pay for it, the PBM system didn't catch it, because their test was 7 scripts, 3 docs, 3 patients. So we're seeing in the data that there are patients that are receiving more than 1,000 pills a month. It's 30 pills a day of huge Oxy 80 milligram, Oxy 40s for years, and no flag was tripped. Doctors were ending up getting suspended, and they were paying for those claims with your insurance dollars, so somebody could get their hands on over 1,000 pills. But the systems they designed were window dressing. And they were window dressing so they could tell Congress they had all these great systems in place. But the real business model was, the more pills we sell, the more money we make, because they charge admin fees at the manufacturer level. They charge for per transaction, admin fee at the pharmacy, admin fee at the plan, and then they capture a spread, the delta between what they have to reimburse the pharmacy and what the plan pays. There was so many avenues for volume equals revenue. Why would they put meaningful systems in place to curtail volume?
Those
it's crazy.
Systems feel analogous to what we hear from like something like in that Meta case, where it's like we have systems here to prevent this stuff from happening, but in fact, those systems are don't actually do what they say they do.
You have all these
imply that we're doing something about it, and
all these crazy smart Silicon Valley guys came up with quote unquote algorithms to monitor and keep our kids safe. Yeah, right. The videos and social media, they knew exactly what they're doing in the exact same thing here, while telling everyone we're keeping your kids and your family safe. The real deal was, how much money can we make? Same business models, different industry, same business model.
And so you just won a big award or a settlement for a bunch of cities and towns from, is it Albertsons?
Albertsons. So that was and we started this, you and I started talking, as you said earlier, about the opiate litigation in 2016, 17. So here we are 10 years into it. We started with manufacturers and distributors, then we moved to pharmacies. We're over 62 billion right now. And Albertsons was the latest pharmacy that just settled 750 billion. My partner, Jeff Gaddy, took point on that litigation, along with several others from this group, PEC, Plaintiffs Executive Committee, with firms all over. It's a great result. We're moving down that supply chain.
Where does that money end up? Like the cities and the town, it'll be a treatment center. It'll be
exactly. It's really a cool model. We've learned from like the tobacco days, where the money didn't have to be earmarked and it went to potholes and buying XYZ infrastructure for the city and county. All the money that we've made, the 62 billion at this point, it's gone back to cities and counties and states. There is a list of approved uses, which are predominantly clean up the opiate mess. So treatment, education are the huge pieces. We've made a huge impact already on people don't know. You don't know when your kid comes home with I got a little knee surgery 30 days. About 6 months ago. And it was a cleanup, little scope. It was no big deal. In and out same day, outpatient procedure. I did 2 knees back to back in 2 months. And I came home with 120 OxyContin. And I'm thinking, I took 1 or 2 the day of, and I took usually half of them. And but the fact that a kid can come home with 30 days of pills, and no one knows that every week you're on that opiate, the higher the percentage you're going to get addicted, to the tune of, after 2 weeks, there's a 50% chance you'll still be taking opiates a year later, whether legally or illegally. Wow. And they knew it.
And what are, this is a sort of a little bit far afield. There are people out there with legitimate pain and whatnot.
Absolutely.
And so has there been any obligation for, imposed on any of these entities to sort of say, like, you got to provide something that is more safe, or some type of standards to make sure that you can assess, like, someone is in pain and there are procedures to protect people from abusing or from getting hooked when they actually have.
So there's kind of a 2-pronged approach. You have to start with education, and we have to uneducate or re-educate our medical system, including doctors, that for a period of over a decade received education material from Purdue and front groups that Purdue funded, that sounded really fancy, like American Pain Society, but that was funded by the manufacturers, that had all of these great tests, like the 5th vital sign for pain. I'm sure everyone's seen those little smiley faces. That came from Purdue. I pled guilty to a felony in 2007, but it came through one of their front groups. So we're working diligently to re-educate doctors on what are appropriate prescriptions, because we want to make sure that we're trying to find a balance. People that are really in need of pain. We all have loved ones that are cancer, breakthrough pain. We don't want to see anybody in pain, but you don't need 90 pills for a tooth extraction. You don't need a sprained ankle. You need 30 days worth of opiates. Those are the kind of acute short-term pain that we've got to make sure that we curtail and keep small.
What's left on, is there anything coming up on the horizon? Has most of this stuff basically settled?
A lot of it's been settled, and like Purdue's is done, which we're proud of. That Purdue's in bankruptcy. There's no more Purdue, and that's
Of course,
almost finished.
all the principals walked away and hid their money, but
they did. You're right. It's over a period of 20, 25 years. That money's all over the globe. They ended up paying, I think, $3 billion from the individuals, but out of the grand scheme of things, that could be a roll of nickels to most people in comparison. But trying to get to that money, it's been distributed out of the company and in family trusts is extremely difficult. There was a whole team of lawyers, state attorney generals that worked on. So about $8 billion out of the Purdue entities, with Purdue being shut down, which is a big deal. So that's about 8 of the 62, 63 billion. What's left at this point are smaller and smaller players. Judge Polster's done a great job, which is where all the cases are consolidated. And really, PBMs are the last big fish, and we're right in the middle of the ESI and Optum litigation around the country. I take a deposition next week. It'll be my 25th deposition in the last 18 months, and I'm looking forward to getting those cases tried and getting the evidence in front of the American public so they can really see what they did.
Peter Mougey, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming down. All right, let me see about our next guest. I know that we have one at 10. Let me, Emma, let me throw to you for a moment. And
okay. How about I'll read some IMs. How about that?
Yeah, I'll be back in just a second.
Okay. All right. Here I am. Off Cam says the fentanyl issue is so self-manufactured that you can only can they hear Sam still? Okay. Colonel Burner, there's no way the guest was given one okay. Off cam, the fentanyl issue is so self-manufactured that you can only wonder why anyone still defends privatized healthcare, actually ruining lives for profit. Yes. Henry Gold, hearing about the current opioid crisis makes me grateful to be a pothead. Always start my day with Sunset Lakes coffee. Put some pep in my step and keeps my knees from hurting. Someone should clip this so I can send it to my Jewish mother. Left is best. Here we go. Okay. We have Sam
and
now?
we are back to Sam in right now.
Hi, folks. Back here, Sam Seder at the Mass Torts Conference in Las Vegas, Nevada. Joining me, Chris Tissy. Chris, you are also another attorney that over the years we have spoken many times, and particularly about this issue. In fact, I was talking to another attorney last night, and you had mentioned like this has gone on a lot longer than you had anticipated, and I had mentioned it to somebody else, and they go, "Oh boy, that has been a long." Litigation, and I feel like I was here 10 years ago and 8 years ago, and people were talking about this. And that is talcum powder, particularly from Johnson & Johnson, being problematic. This is baby powder.
Right.
Will you just remind people, like, what this is, and then give us a sense of like what the issue was and what's happened over the nearly decade that these things have been going on.
Well, first of all, it's good to see you again.
Nice.
And thanks for asking me to talk about it. I mean, the thing about Johnson's baby powder is, among all the products sold in the United States over the course of my lifetime, it is probably one of the most iconic products that we've had. I know that, I had a client who talked to me about having a child in the 1960s. And I always say people left the hospital with the 3 Bs. They left the hospital with the baby, a baby blanket, and baby powder. And they established a lifetime of trust between the product and Johnson & Johnson and this product. So as long as this case has gone on, the issues relating to ovarian cancer and mesothelioma, which are the injuries that have happened in this case, have gone on for way longer. And a lot of people got sick over the past half century or even longer, and didn't know it, didn't know why, didn't know how. I represented a gentleman who got mesothelioma from his exposure to baby powder every day for 50 years. He was a doctor. He didn't work with pipes and brake pads, and he never worked in a shipyard. He was never exposed to asbestos, and yet he had this disease that was uniquely associated and caused by asbestos. And then we realized he used baby powder, and there are a lot of people who that happened to who never knew why they got what they got.
And that's a very painful death. I mean, right? I mean, that mesothelioma is
it's all terrible. And ovarian cancer, the women who I've had the privilege of representing and their families are among the most wonderful, beautiful people I've met and clients I've had the opportunity to represent. These are women who in the prime of their lives, are in their 50s and early 60s. The kids are grown. They're putting the kids through college. They're reaping the fruits of their labor, and they get this terrible disease that is, by the time it is diagnosed, it's almost invariably fatal. And then their family has to circle around this, usually the center of the family unit, and deal with that loss. It's a terrible thing.
So give us a sense of what did specifically Johnson & Johnson? Was it any other talc?
There are other, I primarily focus on Johnson & Johnson, but there are other talcum powders. And remember, Sam, that talcum powder, we look at it coming out of a bottle, it looks like the sugar you sprinkle on your donuts, right? It looks pure. It looks like something that would be totally innocuous.
It has baby on the label.
Yeah, and the way it was advertised. I've gone back and looked at the advertisements on it. It's like a mother cradling their child. There's nothing more pure. But if you think about it, it comes from the ground, and whatever in the ground, when it's dug up, it is in the product. So there's nickel and chromium and asbestos in it. And so depending upon where the product was mined, it has either more or less asbestos, but it is never pure. There was never a time when you shook powder out of that bottle. It is talc and nothing else.
And so in terms of liability, what did Johnson & Johnson what standard did they have to meet in terms of safety? What did they have to know to be found liable? And what did they know?
Well, you ask a lot of broad questions, so let me see if I can take them one at a time. What is the standard? Johnson's baby powder, like lipstick and deodorant, and they're called consumer products. And while the FDA has some relationship to those products, they totally rely on the company to do the testing. They rely on the company to choose the ingredients. They rely on the companies, the company does not have to submit the kinds of support that they do when, for example, a new drug, a pharmaceutical comes to market. It is totally an honor system. So it's a really highly unregulated business, cloaked in the FDA, and it's almost like giving it a good housekeeping seal.
Yeah.
Right. Now, what did they know? So I kind of look at this case in kind of two.
And what is the standard before we move on? What is the standard? It needs to be safe.
Oh, they have to demonstrate that it's safe and effective. And because there's no benefit to it's not like this is a cancer or an HIV drug where, you have to benefit the risks against the benefits.
Right.
There's no, I mean, baby powder can disappear from the planet, and nobody would be the worst. And what makes it even worse is that there is and always was a safer alternative. For centuries, people have used cornstarch as a powder to on their babies. They use it when when it's hot outside. Cornstarch has always been there and today, if you go to the store and you want to buy powder, that's what you buy is cornstarch. They no longer sell talc. So not only is it a useless product, it's a product where there's a safer alternative. So kind of going to the big picture, I always look at this as a two-tiered liability spanning decades. They knew early on they could never make baby powder safe. They knew and understood.
They could never make talc safe.
I'm sorry. Exactly. They could never, because there was never such thing as pure talcum powder. So you could, asbestos fibers are so small. You could have thousands of them who could fit on the nose of Abe Lincoln on a penny, right? I mean, it's just impossible to get it out. And they knew there was a safer alternative, and they knew asbestos causes mesothelioma. And they were finding asbestos in the ovaries of women who have cancer, ovarian cancer, in the early 1970s. 1980, some folks at 1980s, some folks out of Harvard started looking, doing studies to see whether or not there was an increased risk in women who have used baby powder, and they were finding, more or less a twofold increase. Like you increase, depending on how long you use it, for feminine hygiene, it doubles your risk of ovarian cancer. So that's been going on for 40 years.
Okay. And obviously Johnson & Johnson is aware of this. There's no reports that come out that they're not aware of about their product.
Oh, these were published in the medical literature.
So, but why doesn't the FDA say, like, hey, wait a second. Is it just there's not enough regulatory enforcement? Is it that would they have been, would the FDA even have a sort of like a legal authority based upon a study like that to say to Johnson & Johnson, you have to show us, in light of this report from Harvard, you have to show us that this is...
in fairness, the FDA's resources are always focused elsewhere. They are always focused on issues relating to drugs. Cosmetic safety is way, way down the line. Now, that's not to say that they should not have intervened, in the 70s and 80s. And at different periods of time, they tried to get J&J and talc manufacturers to be more rigorous in their testing. But in the end of the day, it really, these companies had trade organizations who lobbied heavily. One of the directors of the cosmetic department within the FDA went to work left the FDA and actually went to work for the talc manufacturers, and there was never really the will to take care of it. Interestingly, former FDA Commissioner Kessler is one of the experts in our case, and he will say there was never a proof of safety for this product.
And the FDA just doesn't have the resources, and I would imagine statutory sort of like authority. I imagine the FDA has some type of threshold that must be crossed for them to say it's unhealthy or to stop. And I also imagine a company like Johnson & Johnson is just so powerful.
It's a self-regulating industry. I mean, really, that's what it comes to. It's an honor system. They rely on the companies to do the right thing. And I just want to say one other thing. Johnson & Johnson, almost uniquely in amongst all American companies until relatively recently, really got a pass for a lot of the things that they did because of baby powder. because we didn't think of Johnson & Johnson at the way we think of Merck or Pfizer or Sanofi or any of the other we think of them differently. Why do we think of them differently? Because they marketed
baby shampoo and baby and talcum powder. Like it is, the marketing works so well on me, and particularly because I'm of a certain age. It's like I could sit here and probably draw the baby shampoo bottle and the logo. I mean, that is because that was everywhere. It was everywhere. That was a very ubiquitous product.
And baby powder and baby shampoo are the only two products that the company had that actually had the name Johnson & Johnson on it. They wanted association. They wanted that and that trust. And from where I sit, they breached that trust. And I think the FDA.
So they knew about these reports out there. Obviously, if Harvard has done a study. I mean, they know about this. Why didn't they what would it have cost them to? Why didn't they just go? We should just switch to cornstarch.
That honestly is the question that I've struggled with for all the time that I've worked on this case. There was a time in the early 2000s where they had actually made the decision to switch to cornstarch on a December day in the year 2000, and then they pulled the plug on it. I think it was a combination of arrogance and fear that this iconic product upon which the company was built, that people would realize that they're just another pharmaceutical company. I mean, it's almost look at it in the context of, I mean, we are old enough that we remember these things. Coke and New Coke, right? When the Coca-Cola company decided to change the product to New Coke, everybody lost their mind.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm wondering whether that played into it. Plus, I do believe that there's a certain amount of arrogance of we know better. We are Johnson & Johnson. We're not Merck. We're not Pfizer. We're not like those other guys. And, it's no longer on the market. It was taken off the market years ago, 2001, 2002. But it should have been taken off the market decades ago.
Right.
And people died. I want to come back to one issue, Sam, if you don't mind, that you raised early on. Why is it taking so long to get justice for some of these people? Johnson & Johnson has tried to resolve this case in a unique way by trying to send this case into bankruptcy, by splitting off their liabilities for this product, throwing it into a sham company, and sending it into the bankruptcy court. That has sucked 3 years out of the time we could have spent getting these cases to trial. And the really crazy thing and the really sinister thing about it, clients in that 3 years passed away.
Is there I mean, this is the thing that I think it's hard for lay people to understand. Like, the bankruptcy court system is a completely different silo than the tort system.
Right.
And it's almost like I get charged with a crime here and I leave the country and go to a place where there is no, I can't be sent back to the United States. Right. And then you got to go to the bankruptcy court in some fashion and essentially say this is a fraudulent or an abuse of the bankruptcy court because they're not really bankrupt. They're just siphoning off their liability from something that the actual company that still is around and is still full of money and operating, they just don't want the liability.
So the bankruptcy code, I mean, I've learned a lot about bankruptcy over the past couple of years. The bankruptcy code is intended, and I think the phrase is to protect the unfortunate debtor who spends their life and time trying to innovate and run a business. It serves a really important purpose. I wouldn't dispute that.
Right.
And it's an ability for a company to get a fresh start, and we want people to take risks and running a family farm and planting new crops. But you know, a company with $500 billion in assets to turn around and say they can't pay these women and men and families who for decades have trusted their products, and want to not put their company into the bankruptcy court, basically take a shell company, throw that into the bankruptcy court, and walk away, to me, is a perversion of justice that I have never seen.
It's got to be a perversion of the bankruptcy code.
I couldn't do it.
Right. Right.
I mean, it's almost like me saying, you know, I got myself into debt. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take it all my debt, assign it to my son, and send my son into bankruptcy and walk away and take my wife to dinner.
Exactly. It's shocking. Is there a fix for that, or is it just like so intricate that if you put enough lawyers on it, they'll figure out a way to get into bankruptcy court and hide? But was it successful for Johnson?
No, they tried 3 times, and ultimately the court said, see, what Johnson & Johnson wanted in that was to basically absolve the company Johnson & Johnson while sending this small company away.
Right,
and so they wanted to basically have a release. And ultimately the court said, no, if you want to go into bankruptcy, there's a way to do it. You send the whole company into bankruptcy, you submit to the bankruptcy court, you put all your assets there, and we will figure, and they didn't want to do that.
Which
obviously.
Court made that determination? In the tort court?
Bankruptcy court.
Oh, the bankruptcy court.
So
okay.
I mean, the whole thing started. So they started out filing bankruptcy in North Carolina. The North Carolina court said, you don't file your case here. You have nothing to do with North Carolina. They sent it to New Jersey. The Court of Appeal said, not in this court, you can't do it. So they went to Texas, where they thought they have a favorable judge.
Right.
And ultimately that judge said, there's no way you should be in bankruptcy. There's no way you can get what you want out of this court.
Even in Texas.
I don't want to say that, but yeah, even in Texas.
All right. Well, this is I really appreciate you catching us up on this. It's a fascinating story. It's disturbing, but it really does, I think, illuminate like both what trial lawyers do, but also the sort of ways in which corporations function. And I imagine like the individuals in the corporation, there was nobody in there going like, I'm going to lead the charge for us to do the right thing here and lose.
I wish there was.
Of course.
I wish there was. And it's like everything else in our world today. You'd like to think if I was in that situation, I would have been that guy. I hope I would have been that guy. We all hope we would have been that person. But
that person's going to get fired.
Sadly, it did not happen here, and I truly hope, while a lot of these women have passed, I truly hope that they get them and their families, who is left, get some measure of comfort from what we've done. That's our goal.
Chris Tissy, thanks so much for your time today.
Always, I really enjoy speaking to you. Yep, thanks.
All right, folks, and I think we have our next guest is coming right now, and I am you the. His name, it's Caleb Cunningham. And bear with me, sorry. Caleb, welcome to the show. You are working on a medical device case.
Correct. Correct. And I apologize for my voice in advance. The desert air is not great for my allergies.
Well, that is also my excuse. It's not a function of the bourbon that I consume. This case is, I would say, gross. It's very serious and dangerous for people. Can be. But when we started talking about it, I was like, I'm getting a colonoscopy. I'm due for mine. I get one every, 5 years or something like that. And you're working on a case that involves the scopes.
Right. So most people don't realize that the scopes they use are reusable devices. So the scope they're putting in you has been in hundreds of patients before it was put in you. And so we rely on that, and we think, oh, it's got to be sterilized. There's some clean room somewhere that they're cleaning this out. And that's simply not the case. The way these things are cleaned, if you think of a complicated garden hose, they just run a brush. They can't see inside the garden hose. They run a brush through there. They get as much as they can, and then they gas it. That's what they do. And so what happens sometimes is they call it proteinous fluid builds up. So it can be blood, it can be feces, it can be human necrotized tissue, builds up in there. The outside scabs over, and then when they stick it in the next patient, it cracks open. So now you have feces or necrotized tissue or viral load or other bacteria, including superbugs, tuberculosis. There's a documented case of HIV transmission from these scopes from a previous patient, and they've actually done genetic sequencing that they chase back to the scope that started these outbreaks. And there's more and more literature coming out about how serious these cases are. Normally, our immune system can fight some germs, but and so you would think, oh, I'm a 40-year-old or whatever, I'm going in for a diagnostic procedure, but it's not usually directly into the bloodstream, right? So a lot of my clients have gone fully septic within 48 hours or just a few days from their scope procedure. And sepsis is an infection in the blood.
Yes.
Very life-threatening.
Very dangerous.
Yes. So you have healthy people, nothing wrong with doing just what you said. They're doing what the doctor told them to do. They're getting this checkup, this colonoscopy. And look, we've all had that grim indignity of the prep, and we think, oh, the worst is over, and then at least we'll get some propofol and get some sleep out of it. Well, while you're under and they're roto-rootering you with this dirty device, you're gambling, unfortunately, with this infection.
Just one thing I should note is that we don't all get propofol.
Yeah,
I went through a big a fight. I don't know if Matt remembers this. I went through a big fight with my insurance company when they said you got to get local. And I'm like, what does that mean? And the propofol is actually just when you have a anesthesiologist come in. There are other doctors who just provide you like a twilight thing that they can do. It's actually a separate, fascinating conversation because the propofol it knocks you out. A lot of insurance companies won't pay for that anesthesiologist. The customer has to pay for it. Sometimes the insurance, but what it is, it's just a way to increase the efficiency of the doctor who doesn't have to put you out. He just comes in and, does the
mandatory report it. But a lot of hospitals don't report this information. And so when we look at countries where there are mandatory reporting, like France, for instance, they have a lot higher failure rate. Well, that's just not true. It's just because they have to report every failure. We don't have to report every failure. So this is a more systemic problem with regulation. So we anticipate that only about 10 to 15% are actually reported. Some estimates are as low as 4% of all failures are reported. Most folks, they go to a gastro doctor who does who has a little shop, right? That's not part of the hospital, an endoscopy center or something like that. That's where you have the scope procedure. But when they get sepsis, they end up at the ER, and those are two different facilities that don't necessarily talk to each other. And so a lot of times they're not blaming the scope because they don't know. They'll note in the medical records, what I see a lot in the medical records is, oh, they had a scope within 24 hours or whatever. And they're checking for perforations, but they're not checking for dirty scopes.
The introduction of some type of
a superbug or viral load.
All right, but okay, so with the caveat that anywhere from 85 to 95% are not reported. What's the rate of reported ones?
So the rate of reported ones is about 2,000, 3,000 in the literature here in the U.S. We anticipate
out of like how many opportunities for an endoscopy or
so there's millions. There's millions of procedures, but our research believes there's 20 to 30,000 failures in the U.S. annually. Now, you say, you're playing the odds, which we do, unfortunately, in this country a lot with medical devices. But this is a fairly significant failure rate. When you look at the level of infection, it's even higher. So some studies that have come out have shown up to 95% of all patient-ready scopes are contaminated with viral load in the plastic. And so it's just a crapshoot if your antibodies are good enough to fight it off. Particularly what we see is when they do a polyectomy. So they do the scope and a colonoscopy, right? There's a mucosal wall that generally protects your body, right? The intestines are gross. And so there's this layer in there that generally protects you. When they do the polyectomy, though, they've breached that.
If there's polyp that they remove.
Correct. Or they've sampled, right? That's part of what they're doing is sampling. Do you have precancer or something like that? Now they've breached that barrier. And that has allowed this dirty scope to put, plus they've used, again, if we think of the scope as a complicated garden hose, they've deployed some of the mechanisms that are generally in that sheath. Really where we see the highest failure rate is duodenum scopes for ERCP procedures. So that's the bile ducts.
Yes.
That doesn't have as much protection as, say, an endoscopy or a colonoscopy. That's not what that body part is designed to do. So, and there's a little elevator and actuator because it has to rise up and stuff. So you have a perfect storm of lots of little moving parts, a very nasty area of the body as far as bile and contamination. And then once it's in there, the body doesn't know what to do. And so we have a lot of folks dying from this, unfortunately, that we've seen as we've taken on clients. Their loved one has passed from an ERCP procedure, and it's within 30 days, most of them within a few days of this procedure, they go septic and they pass.
So the alternative, I mean, look, there's risk in every medical procedure. That is the nature of it, and you weigh that risk. But we go in with that risk. We go in saying well, the risk that we're taking has been minimized. It is like the minimal risk. I need a colonoscopy. I go get one, and I trust that anything that can be done to minimize the risk is being done.
Well, unfortunately, that's naive. And I wish we lived in a world where that was true. But these companies are profit-based companies, and they are wanting to make as much money as possible. They have known this particular company was prosecuted criminally and convicted criminally for bribing doctors and failing to report failures, device failures that they were aware of. This is one of the only times I've seen a successful criminal prosecution. One of their vice presidents got a felony conviction for what they did, and they've continued to do it.
Was it associated with this problem?
Yes.
How is that? What percentage of this? How many different devices are there on the market?
Well, so there's quite a few devices, and the FDA has even led an import ban last year, which I've never seen in my career for a major manufacturer. But the interesting thing is an import ban is not a recall. So they've stopped new ones from coming in, but the hospitals are free to use the ones that are already here indefinitely because there wasn't a recall. And those weren't the gastric scopes, but bronchioscopes, laparoscopes, and several other type scopes made by the same manufacturer at the same plant. So there's no difference. It's really terrifying, this particular.
How many percent, what percent, what market share do they have?
Up to 85% based on their records. I mean, so they're the 1,000-pound gorilla in this space. Interestingly,
what agency should say hey, wait a second, remember all this other stuff that we did? You need to do a recall of all this.
Well, the FDA ideally would be the agency to do that. But unfortunately, as we've seen a lot of times, for whatever reason, they failed to do that. There's been letters sent by the FDA for what's called 483s, where they've said, hey, you're not reporting these failures accurately. You're not complying accurately. And that's before the import ban. There's an interesting study the FDA did where they said, hey, we're going to take these experts and we're going to try to follow your instructions for cleaning and see what percentage fail. And this was on the ERCP machine, the duodenum scope. 87% failed at some critical step of the cleaning process.
They failed in, you mean they were assessed after each part of the cleaning process, and despite the fact that they were cleaned in the way that the manufacturer said,
these people failed to meet the standards that the manufacturer set. The problem is that the standards the manufacturer set are not humanly possible to follow. Then there's other research, and this is the FDA's own knowledge. This is a study of the FDA commission that says that Then further, one step further, there's a lot of literature, scientific literature, where these scientists have said, hey, we have complied with everything you told us to do, and it's still contaminated. We're still getting viral load. We're still getting tissue, or what they call debris, out of this scope, even though we've complied. There's one study, I think it was 20 or 40 times they tried to clean it in compliance with the scope, and they were still pulling out bacteria from that scope.
Oy. I'm just thinking about my colonoscopy that's coming up. It's gotten that much more disturbing. What is there? And so you guys are looking for what? I mean, obviously compensation for people who've been harmed by these, but really these things. Oh, and we should say there is an alternative, right? It's single use,
which they make and is a growing market share for them. So they know they can make a single use device that doesn't have these issues. It exists, they make it, but it's a cost issue for the insurance companies. And so you're seeing more and more market share move towards the single use device. But they can also say, hey, if you have a superbug, don't get this scope procedure. So there's other things they can do. There are tests they can do, very cheap tests they can do to say, does this scope, before we use it on little Timmy, produce bacteria? Is there viral load? Are there proteins that are coming off the wash? So they have very inexpensive, cheap means at their disposal. They just don't want to do it, because then that would be admitting a problem.
And that would create more liability. So they just rather go to court. They're going to try and basically avoid any type of like a finding, or maybe they'll do a settlement and sweep it under the rug. Is there like, we're like U.S. U.S. attorneys. What about state AGs? I mean, aren't there like?
Well, usually medical device regulation is on the federal government, so the state AGs really can't do much, because again, so it falls to plaintiffs' attorneys a lot. And I know, people see the billboards for car crashes and things, and I'll agree with them on a lot of those complaints. But plaintiffs' attorneys have time and time again found these issues and created change. I'm one of the trial attorneys with hernia mesh. I've been very fortunate to be involved in that case. Before the attorneys got involved, this wasn't an issue.
Hernia mesh is a medical, I don't know if we call it device.
It is a device, yes.
That they used to repair, almost like, it's almost like what you use, like drywall tape in some way.
That's a good way of talking about it. And there were several devices that they knew they had problems with, but they kept selling them. And so multi-billion-dollar lawsuits later, those devices are either off the market or coming off the market, and the people who've been injured by them have been compensated.
Is it, could could actions that you guys take cause them to recall the ones that are out there already, or?
Absolutely. I mean, so what happens?
Or is there also liability? I mean, should hospitals that are aware, like, okay, or insurance companies aware that, like, this is dangerous, this could cause other issues, do they have liability at one point?
Well, certainly the manufacturer is going to blame them, right? That's going to be their first step is, hey, you didn't follow instructions.
Well, but if they know there's nothing they can do, I mean, the manufacturer has ultimate liability. It's quite clear. But if I know that I've got a product that, is designed, it has a design flaw, which is what it sounds like, right? Like, there's no way to clean this. And I own one of those products and I'm using it. At what point do I have liability for having that awareness?
Well, and so that's an interesting question, because again, that's going to be a specific question, because what did you know? We know knowledge, right. Knowledge is a loaded word. They'll say, oh, we didn't know that they were dirty. We didn't know that they could be cleaned. We relied on the manufacturer, right. That sort of stuff. You know how lawyers are.
Right.
But I think they've been misled. I think a lot of them have been misled by companies over the years to believe that this device is safe. And there is a cavalier attitude amongst a bunch of surgeons, because they'll say, oh, I've never seen an infection. Well, you're the scope doctor. You're not going to see the infection because once I get septic, I'm not coming back to you. I'm going to the ER, which, may not even be in the same hospital group or whatever. So again, I had an endoscopy fairly recently, and I was talking to him before I went under. Again, based on my health issues, I decided, I had to move forward, but I have more knowledge, a lot more knowledge than the average person would be. And I was educating the doctor before I went under about what some of these issues were, because he wasn't aware. It's unfortunate, nobody cares more about your health than you do. And ultimately, we're responsible for trying to educate ourselves and educate sometimes our own doctors, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, if the doctors don't know, it's much harder.
Right.
It's we don't go to them. They're not selling us like a stereo or something where you can go out. And I read this is the top rated. Wow. So I guess for folks out there who have had some type of incident after a colonoscopy and endoscopy, this is something they should look into in terms of like finding an attorney who's doing this case. Where is the case at this point?
So we're filing cases across the country. What they need to realize is that there's a time limit, right? So there's a statute of limitations on cases. You only have a certain period of time to file. But even with that, we're only taking cases that my firm is only taking cases that had the infection within 30 days of the scope procedure. And they have to meet some other criteria, but that's because we're going to have an expert, a doctor who looks at this, and he has to be able to say, I've ruled out everything else that could have caused the infection. So ideally, you have somebody who's 40 years old, they come in, they're great health, they have no infection, they're not on dialysis, they're not on chemo. There's no reason for this person to be sick. They have a scope procedure at noon today, and by 8 o'clock at night, they're in the hospital with sepsis. You don't have to be Dr. House to figure out why that happened. There's no cuts. There's no open wounds. There's no predisposition to this. The only thing that has happened to this person is this diagnostic scope procedure. Those are the type cases that we're collecting. Those are the type cases that we're filing. And again, we designed this criteria in consultation with infectious disease experts.
Caleb Cunningham, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Disturbing and enlightening. So, oh boy. Well, that freaked me out a little bit.
Yeah.
I went to have lunch.
They dust you with asbestos, and then they put a dirty rotor up you when they try to find it.
You guys want to shift me? I think that'll be it for guests. So you can switch that camera. Can you switch the camera? There we go. Yeah. Well, I mean, there it is. I mean, those are all sort of fascinating and in some instances sort of gross cases. But it gives you a taste of the way that the regulatory agencies and the corporations function. And I think in a lot of instances, we have a lot less sort of like regulatory oversight than we imagine. And that's a problem. A lot of times Europe has a lot more of this in many instances. Tomorrow on the program, I don't know what guests I'm going to have. I looked for them the day before, and there was a very big case against Meta, and the attorneys around. I'm trying to locate that person, but I guess we can move on to other parts of the show. Might as well make it a freebie Thursday.
Yeah.
Right?
Might as well.
We got about 40 minutes left or so.
Sure.
What type of clips should we get into here?
We could do Pete Hegseth.
This is a big story, right?
Yes, yes.
So Pete Hegseth, the articles of impeachment were introduced in the House. I think it was yesterday. We should also say we have some breaking news, right?
Yeah. What a coincidence. The Democrats are finding new ways to keep keep Trump's war in Iran going. The House just failed to pass the War Powers Resolution conveniently by one vote, 213 to 214. And the one Democrat who voted to let Trump continue waging this criminal war is Jared Golden, who is leaving Congress. It's just, we know that Jeffries has the capacity to whip these votes. And we know that they use a rotating villain strategy to disperse blame. And Golden is not going to be in Congress, so he can be the fall guy. And he might get another, I don't know, $500,000 in whatever board seat contract that he gets with a defense contractor over this. So it's a win-win for Golden and for the Democrats, or Democratic leadership.
Wasn't the last vote, there were 4, right?
There were 4. But the reporting was that they had the votes and they punted Meeks and Jeffries, and they didn't force the vote on this prior to the 2-week recess, which has enabled much of this horror as well.
That they had the votes before the recess?
That was Axios was reporting that, and it was kind of, well, they said that they had every Democrat on board, and they also had, they felt, Boebert said, or not Boebert,
Nancy
sorry.
Mace.
Nancy Mace said that she was going to vote against it. This is breaking news, so I want to see how the vote shook out, but
yeah, they were supposedly had the chat. They were all there, and then said, "But we don't have enough Republicans." And then Nancy Mace broke, and they
Massey
said, "Well,"
broke. I thought too, but maybe not.
and then they're saying, "Well, now we don't have time for it. We're going on vacation." And they come back from vacation, and what a surprise! There's one Democrat there to kill it. This is why the party is hated.
I mean, I would be, I wouldn't be surprised if Golden just simply voted against this. I mean, but it's possible that I don't know.
But
If Jeffries can't, he needs. We need somebody who can.
Right. And so it's either incompetence or he didn't whip the votes that he needed in the 2-week recess.
And were there other Democrats who voted, or was it a party line vote aside from that?
Every Democrat except for Golden and Massey voted with the Democrats. And there was a Republican that voted present. Warren Davidson.
Interesting.
I mean, it's just a little convenient that along these narrow margins, there's always just one Democrat ready to, we came up so close.
It's getting too obvious. This is broken containment. It's not just people who follow this stuff closely. It's becoming, as they say now, a meme that Democrats do this.
And that Israel controls Congress. Like that's basically, it's become a broadly understood, and they feel, and this is what we're talking about with the Democrats not engaging democratically with their base. Like, it's more than just elections. It's about showing responsiveness when you're governing. And
that's a really, can I just jump in on that point? Like, there's all this, third ways when you're like, what's the best way to win X or Y seat? And I'm somewhat agnostic about that. If you can win other ways, fine. I do know that governing does not go well with these people. With Manchin, Fetterman, all these people. Like, they're the problem when it comes to actually governing.
And it's, they don't believe you on democracy when you're not responding to, like, the support for Israel's actions in the Democratic base with Democratic voters is in the single digits. Over 70% of Democrats think Israel's committing genocide. How can you not get the entire caucus on board? I mean, and this war,
driving
this
up
war,
gas prices.
of course, yeah. But that's what they see this as a way to hurt him. They don't want to get in the way of Trump hurting himself, and it's a twofer because the Zionist lobby wants the war anyway. So you can hurt your opponent politically and give the lobby what it wants.
I think this is most prominent in the Senate. Now, of course, Democrats don't control the Senate, but Chuck Schumer's willfully voting against his own caucus and
He's a zealot, but like,
Democratic Party.
what is Gillibrand's excuse? I mean, like, it's honestly, it's incredible to me that she still thinks you're going to control the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. How's that been going? Because last I saw, even with all of your big money, Plattner just outraised their pet candidate Mills, who isn't seemingly even trying anymore. Haley Stevens is cratering in Michigan, and they're looking for an off-ramp with McMorrow. And like, you want to take credit for Sherrod Brown? He's already been in power, and his race, he should be running away with it more than he is. They're failures. She's a failure, and she's corrupted. Like, you can't even blame religious zealotry for this in the way that I think Schumer really does, is extreme as a Zionist. But with Gillibrand, what is it? Just racism or corruption? What is it?
It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both. It can be both. All right. Speaking of religious zealotry, members of the House have brought impeachment, not proceedings, but have raised an impeachment act, a bill against Pete Hegseth. And this coming in the wake or just before Pete Hegseth's religion. I mean, this is sort of, it's sort of amusing, I guess. It's also sort of terrifying. Pete Hegseth thinks he's waging a religious war. It's just that he doesn't quite know his religion in the way he thinks he does.
Quickening instrument. If nothing else will do to sever me from my sins, Lord, send me such sore and trying calamities as shall awake me from my earthly slumber. It must always be best to be alive to thee, whatever be the quickening instrument. Whatever be the quickening instrument, it's almost never what sometimes it's what we want it to be, but often it's exactly the opposite of what we think we want, but Jesus Christ knows exactly what we need. And everyone was looking for something else in Jesus' time. We often look somewhere else and look at trials through the wrong lens. And Jesus understands what kind of recipe we need for his purpose. Which leads me finally to a prayer that I'll read, which was also handed to me a couple of days ago, delivered from the lead mission planner of Sandy 1. Sandy 1 were the A-10s that were a part of the daylight rescue mission of 44 Alpha, Dude 44 Alpha out of Iran. And if you know anything about Sandys, their job is to bring those A-10s.
I just want to just sort of catch you up to what's going on here. The Secretary of War, as he calls himself, actually the Secretary of Defense, is up there explaining to what seemed like a lot of military personnel at the Pentagon why we're doing this, and apparently has a lot to do with JC. And then he goes into this prayer because he's such a God-fearing man and knows his Bible. Here he is.
Alpha out of Iran. And if you know anything about Sandys, their job is to bring those A-10s and put them in between the enemy and that down pilot. And so their job is to literally sacrifice themselves for someone else. And in Iran, in contested territory, that's exactly what they did. So this prayer was recited by Sandy 1, which is one of the Sandys, to all Sandys, all those A-10 crews, prior to all CSAR missions, but especially this CSAR mission that happened in real time. They call it CSAR 2517, which I think is meant to reflect Ezekiel 2517. So the prayer is CSAR 2517, and it reads, and pray with me, please. The path of the downed aviator is beset on all sides by the iniquities of the selfish and the tyranny of evil men. Blessed is he who, in the name of camaraderie and duty, shepherd the lost through the valley of darkness, for he is truly his brother's keeper. and the finder of lost children. And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to capture and destroy my brother. And you will know my call sign is Sandy 1 when I lay my vengeance upon thee.
Oh my God. I can hear Samuel L. Jackson in my head.
What it is. Exactly.
Yes.
Can we play at least the audio from that?
Well, we have one that plays them both simultaneously.
Yes, someone put it together.
Let's see that.
So the prayer is Caesar 25:17, and it reads, and pray with me, please. The path of the downed aviator is beset on all sides by the iniquities of the selfish and the tyranny of evil men. Blessed is he who in the name of camaraderie and duty shepherd the lost through the valley of darkness. For he is truly his brother's keeper and the finder of lost children. And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to capture and destroy my brother. And you will know my call sign is Sandy 1 when I lay my vengeance upon thee.
And you will know my name is the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon thee.
Okay. Well, I mean,
oh my God.
Samuel L. Jackson did it much more dramatically. Let's face it. But at least, right? I mean, I'm no Christian, but at least they're just both quoting a Bible verse. Isn't that right?
Sort of. They're more quoting Tarantino 25:17. There are a couple sentences from Ezekiel 25 that are borrowed, and but it's mostly Tarantino's prayer.
Tarantino is, he's preaching the gospel. He's living in Israel now, right?
That's right.
Just to get closer to God. So I can see why they got confused. What is with plagiarism and this administration? Melania's like, you stole my whole goddamn flow. Like, I mean, come on. And I think people have to be sabotaging him behind the scenes, right? This is embarrassing.
No, this is what religious people in the military think. This is how religious they are. They don't know jack about anything, and they'll just quote Tarantino thinking it's the actual Bible.
But how did they even come across it?
Because they cribbed it from.
It's probably ChatGPT.
No, they took it from Samuel Jackson because they thought he's badass.
Oh, and they think it's an actual Bible
they
verse.
assume Tarantino took it from the Bible. Yeah.
Why would you assume that?
Because they don't actually read the thing that they're.
Let's go for Sunday school. We're watching Pulp Fiction.
Are they going to sue Tarantino for fraudulently making them?
No, Tarantino's going to be like, I thought it was fucking awesome, okay? It's really good what he did. It got me about $2 million in royalties, all right?
It's true.
Really
There's a
good
lot of people who are going to watch. There's a lot of people who are going to watch that movie now, just for the sake of. That's
I got
amazing.
some from the book of Sam Seder. Here, let's try this. Hearken unto these words of warning. The combined treasuries of OSI and DI shall be depleted in the year 2035, even as written in the previous scrolls. And when that day cometh, the treasury shall have sufficient tribute to pay but 83% of the scheduled benefit. Nonetheless, they can raise the cap.
Who wrote that?
You did, brother.
It's all written.
Apostle Sam.
It is written.
That is hilarious. Well, you can't. I guess you can't. You can't impeach him for that.
There's another Pete Hegseth excerpt here from a different speech at the Pentagon. I'm curious to get your opinion on this, Sam, because I think it invokes maybe the Old Testament, which I'm not gonna lie, I'm less familiar with. Yeah. In the beginning.
I am also not fully briefed on the Old Testament. I know that's hard to believe, Brian, but
I know
go ahead.
you pour
I'll take
over
my
it
best
every
shot.
night.
Yeah.
We urge this new regime to choose wisely. Speaking of choosing wisely, a note to the press corps, to the American media, as I just can't help but notice the endless stream of garbage the relentlessly negative coverage, you cannot resist peddling.
Is he going to cry?
Despite the historic and important success
You didn't even
of this
compliment
effort and the
sandwich
success
me.
of our troops. Sometimes it's hard to figure out what side some of you are actually on. It's incredibly unpatriotic.
Tries, is he going to blow his nose into that
same
American
press
hanky?
corps, not this exact same press corps, but at least an older press corps,
desecration.
bent over backwards during the Biden administration to explain away, you explained away the disastrous and disgraceful Afghanistan withdrawal. You called it the greatest airlift in American history. It's almost like you're cheering only for one side. This past Sunday, I was sitting in church with my family, and our minister preached from the book of Mark, the third chapter. And in the passage, Jesus entered a synagogue and healed a man with a withered hand. The Pharisees came to watch. And as the scripture reads, they came to see whether Jesus, would heal him, or he would heal him on the Sabbath.
Oh, God.
So that they might accuse him. You see, the Pharisees, the so-called and self-appointed elites of their time, they were there to witness, to write everything down, to report. But their hearts were hardened.
All right,
Even
pause it for
though
one
they
second. I'm
witnessed
just trying
a
to
literal miracle, it didn't matter.
One sec.
They were only there.
Are you trying to figure out that the analogy is Trump and Christ?
Yeah, oh, definitely. I mean, well, first off, this is not the Old Testament.
You're right. It's the New Testament. I'm Catholic. We
Testament.
don't read the Bible.
There was not a synagogue at that time. It was obviously a temple, but whatever. And the Pharisees, I don't know, they would refer to themselves as reporters, but
or
okay.
elites.
It's quite clear, though, the Jews are out to get Jesus over and over again. And just want to make that clear. That's what Hegseth is implying.
I didn't know what Pharisees meant until I just looked it up because I'm very Bible illiterate as well. So
There
it was a group of Jews.
A couple different sects of Jews: the Sadducees, the Pharisees, one other.
That's a little on the nose then from Hegseth saying essentially.
The Pharisees were the priests, essentially, I think, and the Sadducees were not. And they were the ones who didn't. Hey, Jesus, don't tip over our money changing. I don't know if it was money changing, but the sacrifice table, essentially, where we have the sacrifices that we're going to do. All right, but continue. I'm curious where he's going with this.
Oh, sorry. Let me pull it up again. I thought we were done with that clip. Give me a second.
Because he's going to say that the press is like the Jews, and he and Trump are, of course,
Christ.
Like Christ. Okay.
The Pharisees came to watch. And as the scripture reads, they came to see whether Jesus, would heal him, or he would heal him on the Sabbath, so that they might accuse him. You see, the Pharisees, the so-called and self-appointed elites of their time, they were there to witness, to write everything down, to report. But their hearts were hardened. Even though they witnessed a literal miracle, it didn't matter. They were only there to explain away the goodness in pursuit of their agenda. As the passage ends, the Pharisees went out and immediately held counsel against him, how to destroy him. I sat there in church and I thought, our press are just like these Pharisees.
I think I've seen mega church pastors give this same sermon when they're in trouble for like money laundering and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Sexual assault or something. Yeah.
These Pharisees are coming after me.
In other words, or as Taylor Swift called them, the haters.
Church, and I thought, our press are just like these Pharisees. Not all of you, but the
Hashtag
legacy
not all Pharisees.
Trump-hating press. Your politically motivated animus for President Trump nearly completely blinds you from the brilliance of our American warriors.
That's what I've been
The
saying around
Pharisees
here.
scrutinized every good act in order to find a violation, only looking for the negative. The hardened hearts of our press are calibrated only to impugn. I would ask you to open your eyes to the goodness, the historic success of our troops, the courage of this president in this historic moment.
Ain't nothing gonna break a man's stride. Ain't nothing gonna slip. That was accidental.
It was kind of perfect because this is now the move with the Trump administration people that are in hot water. They just go after the press because he's probably going to be the person that bears the brunt of Trump being angry that Iran is basically forcing the U.S. to surrender.
Well, also, like, you double down on the religious stuff. It's like how the Nixon people just became born again after they got disgraced, because, like, that's the last people that will pretty much accept you.
Well, it's also it's attractive to people that are horrible because they can feel cleansed of their sins without having to do any introspection like therapy would do. That's what religion provides.
Russell Brand.
Diddy reading the Bible in courtroom during his federal trial, reports TMZ.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. Only God can judge me.
Let's move on to
anything else.
Do we do these two Tim Pool comments?
Can we cover 7 really quickly, just because I want to cover that poll?
That's interesting. Because this comes on the heel of another poll, right? I said, wasn't there a Data for Progress poll that was out?
Yeah, Emerson. Data for Progress is really good. It trends liberal, trends left. So Emerson's a larger pollster, and Emerson found that since January, Abdul al-Sayed has gained 8 points in the Michigan Senate Democratic primary. So Hassan is just sinking him like a lead balloon. McMorrow has gained 1 to 2 points. Haley Stevens has lost support significantly. So it looks like McMorrow and al-Sayed are essentially tied. And this is a really long primary. August is the date. I forget exactly which date it is, but it's going to be a marathon. I said that, I think, exact word to Abdul al-Sayed when he was in studio the other day. And I just think we should be watching what happens also with Haley Stevens. If she continues to collapse and you have McMorrow auditioning for Zionist money and by throwing Hassan under the bus.
That's what that was.
There are going to be people that are putting a ton of pressure, and by people I mean like the leadership that supported Stevens. They're going to be putting a lot of pressure on her to drop out so that they can coalesce behind McMorrow.
Shannon Watts, who is been going at I'm already seeing it. Here's one of the tweets. Seems like one of these people should drop out for the sake of the party, and I saw another person say that too. So the Stevens is gonna I would say
is McMorrow gonna drop out?
Haley's comments, it's time to make yourself heard. Make sure you don't let those nasty McMorrow people try to pressure you out of the race.
Right. Let your light shine, Haley. Honestly. This is what we're saying.
It would be pretty embarrassing for Schumer to have his candidate have to drop out of the race.
Right.
Look for them also to start speaking more highly. I'm very surprised by Mallory McMorrow because she's, basically replacement level in terms of Haley Stevens here.
Yeah, and Elizabeth Warren, what the hell? She should rescind her endorsement.
Who's running that political side of Liz Warren? Like,
I don't know.
Who advises her on that stuff?
It's
Can they,
crazy. It's crazy. And she also endorsed Graham Plattner, which is awesome, but it's not very politically courageous to do so at this point because of how well he's doing.
Yeah, he's crushing.
Yeah. So I'm not sure a Warren endorsement really even means anything at all, so it doesn't matter, but I just found that
for
to
her
be
sake,
bizarre.
it'd be nice to not have real head scratchers from people who are supposed to be leaders.
I mean, I suspect it has some influence in that race. I think,
Maybe.
she gives a license for lefties. But the Mallory McMurrow's response on single payer healthcare was, I don't know if I remember a single response to any question anywhere that I found more problematic than that. The argument that we shouldn't have single payer healthcare because would you want Donald Trump in charge of your healthcare is so disingenuous.
Yeah.
And problematic in terms of people's support for government. I mean, first of all, Donald Trump is in charge of 1/3 of Americans' healthcare, arguably the most vulnerable, because we're talking about old people and children, and through Medicaid and Medicare, and the idea
So he is a doctor.
That is the reason why we wouldn't have healthcare, because RFK Jr. might be even remotely associated with it. I mean, that's just absurd. That is an argument as to why we shouldn't have government for anything. I mean, this is the thing. If you are willing to make that argument about single payer healthcare, I understand like people saying, I would disagree, but if she came up there like the country's not ready for this, or it's not, it's very complicated and how we would go about it. And we need to, all the hemming and hawing, but to make this argument, you then can make that argument about every single function of the U.S. government.
Yeah.
And rarely do those people make those arguments when it comes to things like spying authority, as we're seeing in the Senate right now.
Yeah, and it's also why we hate those
worst
anti-tax arguments. Sorry, Sam, but from the Democrats, like on slashing taxes as opposed to for some kind of like cheap populism on this front for middle income folks. It's we have to be making the case for more taxation, but specifically on billionaires to break their backs, and then also to fund social programs. And I guess McMorrow previously volunteered for Warren and had endorsed her in for her presidential run, so that might be why she weighed in. But that answer, to your point, Sam, was so cynical and messed up. Like she should not be endorsing a candidate that has that view about single payer healthcare.
I mean, it was so disturbing because I've seen people weasel around Medicare for all, and that's an option on the table for her. But the route that she took, I think, belies either a willingness to say just about anything, or fundamentally, you're talking about somebody who has real hostility to government doing anything. And that's really problematic. Let's have some good news, though, shall we? Let's go to New York. You mentioned that taxation of the wealthy. We've had this problem in New York City for, I feel like, a couple of decades, where massive apartments are purchased. It's basically just sort of like a way for wealthy people to park their money. And, maybe they come for X amount of days out of the year, or not. But I suspect a lot of them, do. And certainly we also have people who, and I've talked to people about this, and I can't, like, they've actually said it to me, and I just I can't believe that someone would even articulate this. I just found it so sort of grotesque. But I remember one person said to me, I was at some type of party, and, like a party I don't normally go to, sort of a more literary type of thing. And the guy said to me, my wife is out of town because she has to spend, X number of days in Florida to make sure that she's not in New York for tax purposes.
Yeah.
And the way it works in
he didn't know who he was talking to, did he?
No. I mean, I just like, really? Tell me more.
Yeah.
And they will check your phone. They will check where your phone was pinging, or they'll check your credit card use if they find out that you've spent whatever half of 365 plus 1 is in New York City, then you are subject to things like New York City income tax. And New York City income tax, I mean, tax in New York is high. But wealthy people are really wealthy in New York. You know, a $5 million apartment is the bottom we're talking about. And
That's the threshold. So for like the tax that we're talking about here that Hochul then agreed to, it's second homes from out-of-staters that are worth $5 million or more. And apparently there are 59,000 units in New York City that would be subjected to this tax, and it would raise $500 million annually.
I know some wealthy people, not a ton, but I know some, and they have apartments where I walk in, I'm like, oh, wow. And none of them are $5 million. Like, I can't even imagine. And, you know, obviously apartments go up to like 20, 30, I don't know, get incredibly expensive here, but $5 million apartment. But here is Zoran Mamdani. And remember, he is trying to get a full sort of suite, if you will, no pun intended, of taxes on the wealthy. And so, like, I don't know how much money is going to be raised with this. Every bit counts because of Eric Adams' massive hole that he dug for Mamdani. But the idea is that, like, you're opening the door to the idea and introducing to people, like, what the wealthy are getting away with. Yeah, I'm sorry, like, the idea that you can come, have a $5 million, $1 million apartment, and not have to pay, you pay, real estate taxes, I presume. But to not have to sort of like pay for any of the services that you clearly use in New York, that just keep your apartment safe for that matter, seems absurd to me. Go ahead.
And it's 500 million is what it would raise of the 5.4 billion.
That's not nothing.
Budget.
But
No, it's
that's
not
not
nothing. Yeah, it's a start.
But it is a start. Go ahead.
When I ran for mayor, I said I was going to tax the rich. Well, today, we're taxing the rich. I'm thrilled to announce we've secured a pied-à-terre tax, the first in New York's history. This is an annual fee on luxury properties worth more than $5 million, whose owners do not live full-time in the city. Like for this penthouse, which hedge fund CEO Ken Griffin bought for $238 million. This pied-à-terre tax is specifically designed for the richest of the rich, those who store their wealth in New York City real estate, but who don't actually live here. But even so, they're able to reap the huge financial rewards of owning property in, dare I say, the greatest city in the world. And most of the time, these units are sitting empty, since again, they don't actually live here. This is a fundamentally unfair system that hurts working New Yorkers. Now, it's coming to an end. This tax will raise at least $500 million directly for the city. It'll help fund things like free childcare, cleaner streets, and safer neighborhoods. As mayor, I believe everyone has a role to play in contributing to our city, and some a little bit more than others. Happy Tax Day, New York.
Announcing it on tax day too, like a boss.
This really upset a lot of right-wing podcasters who are saying it was a call for violence by naming that guy in his apartment.
How
by
dare
name.
he name a private citizen in front of his place of residence? Or not residence.
The idea, I mean, I don't think you can get 5 feet when close to that building, but no, actually, if anything, this is a call for taxation on people like that, and a outlet instead of violence being one where they are going to contribute to society. I mean, if you're going to take your apartment and turn it into a safety deposit box that just accrues wealth, it's basically a wealth storage thing that functions as a wealth storage because of all the money that people who live in New York pay for services to create value in that apartment. That apartment, you could put that apartment in, I don't know, Lowell, Massachusetts, and I got news for you, folks. It ain't going to cost that amount of money.
Yeah.
And 10 years later, it's probably going to cost less than it does. With all due respect to Lowell, I didn't say Worcester because Worcester actually is really on the rebound. But I mean, that's the point. You got to contribute to that which is creating and saving and protecting your wealth. It's nuts. And good for him.
I loved one of the top replies to that tweet was Linda Yaccarino, who was the CEO of Twitter, right? That she did end up leaving, and she ate all of Elon's shit when he took it over. She said, "This is actually one of the scariest things I have seen. It won't stop here." And
I hope not.
I'd like to get that tattooed on my body. What a little.
That is unbelievable. The fear that it creates. They're taxing pied-à-terres.
It's great to go after the thing with a French name first.
100%.
Make all the tax programs unpronounceable.
Yes.
Crudité is next.
You hear that, Scott Besson?
Taxing the crudité. Let's check in on Tim Pool, shall we?
Let's.
Yeah. So Tim,
this is a two-part. This is a two-part story, isn't it?
It is. So Media Matters covered something he said here, and then he later responds to the outrage over Media Matters covering him, but doesn't get the amount of support that he wants from his co-host. So let's watch the thing that got on Media Matters radar first, which is him complaining about Candace Owens.
I am frustrated by stupid people who won't use Google, who won't try to read, who say I don't need to read, who say things like Tim Pool called me a retarded because I don't outsource my thinking to books. Actual quotes from a person. I'm not a big book guy myself. I read all the time, though.
No.
Pause it for a second. Pause it for a second.
This is shocking.
Okay, he's not a big book guy. Presumably he's reading news articles. But let's remember that I sat in his studio with him on November 1st, I think it was, 2024, and questioned him on Social Security, which is the largest line item that we have that our government does. I mean, Social Security is one of the biggest expenditures. There's so much, it is such a huge part of what our government does. And I questioned him on an assertion he made about Social Security. I can't even remember exactly what it was at the time. And he admitted to me that he read only the first paragraph of a story about Social Security, stopped, and then made these proclamations that were completely, wildly wrong.
And that were disproven in the second paragraph that was on the screen.
And he admitted that to me. Well, I didn't read past that. So when he says he reads a lot, I believe him. I just think he reads a lot of headlines. Maybe he gets down through the first paragraph, but let's continue.
Quotes from a person. I'm not a big book guy myself. I read all the time, though. I read digitally and always have. And I've always been an advocate for the internet as you can get better up-to-date information.
Don't take him down. Keep him up. But he may be interested in knowing that there are digital copies of books that are available on your computer or your Kindle type of device.
Who says they read digitally? Anyway.
And in real time, where books don't change. And if the information is outdated or bad, you can't fact check it. You got to go on the internet to do that. Well, here's what I see.
Take that.
Women largely are motivated by drama. And it is the most infuriating thing imaginable.
Yeah.
They vote for drama. They vote for stupid interpersonal trash that does not matter to the function of a society. They vote for soap operas. The responses to all of this, it's just women complaining like retards. Oh my God.
He's such a hack.
Yeah.
You know, I got to be honest. I said this in December, and it's what kicked off that little beef between, Candace and I, where she says, we don't care about your midterms. To me personally, I said, this is demoralizing, entirely demoralizing. Women don't care about tax policy. They care about interpersonal drama. That's what's motivating them in politics, and we will.
This is so good.
I wonder if he thinks it's demoralizing to half the population to be told that you don't get complicated things.
So I was wondering how Tim has his own version of Trump's weave, where I don't necessarily know where it's going, but then we get down to brass tacks because he brings up voting. And that's what he's concerned about. Since Tim was unable to continue taking Edward Gregorian money, he's been cozying up with both Benjamin Netanyahu, Netanyahu's Miami-based son, who loves his show. He's been meeting with him, supporting Israel, and the Trump administration more directly. Everything going all right?
Yep.
Okay. And so he's upset that Candace Owens is not joining in being a Republican hack for the party right now, and she has a large female audience, and she's telling them, don't vote. He's upset that the midterms are going to go badly, and that's why he's saying that they're overly emotional and they only vote based on drama, because her female audience is not interested in voting for Republicans in the way that he wants.
And what also is not clear is if he says like exactly what policies is it that he's supporting that the Republicans who need to hold on to
the tax policies?
Tax policies.
Yes.
He needs more. Yeah, I see. Okay.
Entirely demoralizing. Women don't care about tax policy. They care about interpersonal drama. That's what's motivating them in politics, and we will burn for it.
Unlike
figuratively.
Trump.
What motivates women to vote is that Trump is the bad guy, not whether his policies make sense. What motivates women is whether or not Charlie Kirk's wife betrayed him, not whether or not a leftist who wanted to change policy or stop the advancement of Turning Point killed him or not.
There you go. So that's what Media Matters isolated. Yeah. And so
that is so unfair.
Yeah.
That is so unfair.
So
I can barely understand what he was saying there. Like,
well, just remember all the macro statistics he cited, because that's going to come in. If you don't remember any, it's because he didn't cite any. But this is how they start their response to this section here. This also, George Santos is in the building.
So we should say the first one. When was the first one?
Late March.
Okay, late March. And just the other day, George Santos is in there. He's no longer in prison. And although in many respects, I imagine it's like a torture chamber to be in the room with Tim Pool. But nevertheless, let's continue.
Here's why I'm not going to get an ABC daytime talk show. Phil, you want to read that one?
Tim Pool, women vote for drama. They vote for stupid interpersonal trash that does not matter to the function of a society.
I'm sorry.
They vote.
I don't mean to. The reason why he's not going to get a daytime talk show on ABC is because he won't take his hat off in time.
We just can't underestimate how much real estate The View takes up in conservative pundits' minds. I'm never thinking about The View ever, but they're like post-menopausal women on television with opinions.
It breaks their brains.
And by opinions, I mean emotions that are completely untethered from any rationality, I should say.
Yeah, unlike the policy brain, Tim Pool.
Vote for stupid interpersonal trash that does not matter to the function of a society. They vote for soap operas. I took that, I retweeted that, and I said, it's all true, because it is all true.
Listen,
all true.
It is all true.
Well, I have a major female audience, so please don't say that about my audience.
It is a generalization.
They're not watching tonight.
Girls, I got you.
I'm going to say this again, George. I am going to get business cards printed out that say, if someone presents macro level statistics and you respond with an anecdote, you are low IQ.
How small would that
Or I
font
will
have
say
to be?
a person who responds to macro level statistics with an anecdote is low IQ. That way, when I point out to
Sorry, I just have to underline this. The macro level statistics are apparently him saying that women, because of what Candace Owens is doing, support drama and soap operas. He hasn't cited a macro level statistic, but
it's a macro level assertion.
Generalization, I think, as one of his co-hosts will say later.
And this is also, by the way, there's so much projecting here. He's so emotional about everything. He doesn't read and is clearly self-conscious about it and brings that to the, because it's in his subconscious. And then this is what Tim does all the time. He did it with both of us in our debates, coming up with anecdotes. What about that book he said that I, didn't think should be banned, and that was why I was a pedophile. That was the entire
his whole show is anecdotes.
No, I think I actually said it to his face and said, "You keep coming to me with anecdotes, and I'm coming to you with statistics." Perhaps we're overestimating ourselves, but we may have gotten in his head a little bit.
Well, he's about to show you how unemotional and detached he can be.
Okay.
Level statistics with an anecdote is low IQ. That way, when I point out when I talk to a woman and I say something like, well, in general, women vote for drama and interpersonal stuff, and they go, well, I don't, I can hand them the card. And that's the point. It's not about women, it's about any group. Because this is what you see all the time. The truth is, women as a voting bloc do trend this way. Not every single one, of course. In fact, maybe about 35 to 40% do not. But as a voting bloc, it is reliable that if you want to maximize your female votes, social, trend, cultural, those are your key elements, which is why Candace Owens has a Stanley Cup on her desk. This is a status symbol among women.
What?
It's not just about...
Did he just pick up a Stanley Cup?
Very feminine of you to have
Stanley
one.
Cup, a Stanley Cup in terms of like a water thing, or like
It's a brand. It's a brand.
No, it's not the hockey.
It's not a hockey. It's a brand of water can that was popular on TikTok 6 months ago.
Okay, wait a second. So if I understand what Tim Pool is saying here, that he backed off it. It's not all women. It's only 60 to 65% of women.
Margin for error.
They vote as a block, which is actually not. Block doesn't mean what he thinks it does, right?
I mean, majority of
Women are
white
not a
Trump
voting
won.
block.
Trump
Like,
won white women, by the way. So
there's no head woman who gets up and says, "Guys, this is the way we're voting." That is, so it's not like voting like a voting block. It's sort of like an inappropriate usage of that term. But this dude is now commenting on Candace Owens having a specific brand of water thing. Look at behind him. Like everything he has there is supposed to sort of like, this is me with my skateboard. Here's my katana. Like here's a gun hanging. Like,
yeah, right.
Got my amp.
Like, hey, I got all my male gear here. It just happens to be behind me in my studio by mistake.
Yeah. Whereas I just put my policy calculations.
Yeah, we didn't have. I screwed up when I bought this compound. I didn't get closet space, so I just got to put all my guy gear behind me. Go ahead.
Trend, cultural, those are your key elements, which is why Candace Owens has a Stanley Cup on her desk. This is a status symbol among women. It's not just about what she's saying, because what she's saying is retarded, like debacle or kerfluffle. These are not words. But women care largely about the imagery and the high status of it. So when Candace...
Just freeze it right there. He's got look at what he has, like his prominent skateboard stand behind it. Like, oh, only women care about imagery. Well, dude, look at your, why do you have comic books behind you? Like,
You have a guitar and an amp.
What the like, are you kidding me? You're like, I just need that skateboard really near me, just in case.
That's how I get here.
Right.
Oh, incidentally.
Well, it doesn't have trucks on it.
It doesn't have trucks on it,
but
but whatever. It's cool.
It's actually a hovercraft.
He needs to be able to escape when they're coming for him, like all those hunters with their guns.
I mean, it is just fascinating how he has absolutely no idea that he's accusing Candace Owens of having a and let's be clear, there's a lot of utility in having a water glass next to you because it allows you to drink
She's
water.
hydrating. Yes.
But behind him, he never turns on, he never plays the guitar there. He doesn't skateboard on a skateboard without trucks. He doesn't read those comic books that are behind him or whatever. Go ahead.
This presents salacious soap opera drama like Blake Lively. Oh my God. Brigitte Macron has a penis. Women love it. That's why she has such a massive female audience. Guys don't. Our audience, about 80% dudes.
I know. And every time I come on, they're dying. They're like, why is he there?
Guys?
George could literally only talk about himself.
Have you seen the viral video of the man answering his wife's question like his wife?
I'm going to skip this just a little bit because it's just Tim talking about something irrelevant. I want to get to the part where he loads.
Does Tim's audience freak out that George Santos is there because he's gay? Is that what he's saying?
No, because they really like that weird scammer, grifty gay guy with the long hair that goes on the show. They love him.
Milo Yiannopoulos?
No, he wears the cowboy boots.
Oh, right. The guy that's going to primary John Cornyn if he doesn't agree to the same act.
That weird guy.
Yeah.
They love him. So George, maybe it's because he's I don't know.
George just
a felon? I don't know. They don't care about that.
Not engaged with what Tim is saying at all. Being like, and me, when I come up, people go crazy.
Because you remember when I was saying, I was like, I'm going to meet with Jim. I haven't seen him in a long time. So anyway, he tells this rambling, long-winded story. And then he goes, anyway, the guy that he worked with, whose brother was friends with the chef, actually has a restaurant and downtown. And she goes, are you going to that restaurant? I was like, no, we're going for beers to talk. And then he walked to the door. And the joke was for men, this is how women answer questions.
It's true.
And again, what irks me about stuff like this with Media Matters getting mad is that women get offended when men make observations from a male perspective that they wish did not happen. So when I say something like women vote for stupid
Pause it. Keep it up. Keep the agenda. So in other words, when an entity makes an observation, literally quotes, men get mad that they have been shown this. Like he once again is accusing Candace Owens, and I don't care about Candace Owens, but he's making an accusation and he is doing exactly what he is accusing women of doing. He is getting upset because Media Matters just pointed out that he said this.
I mean, honestly, this should
go
be
back
put
and just listen to this.
Yes, it should be analyzed psychologically in terms of like a case study on projection. He's done it now 5 or 6 times in this clip.
I'm sorry, not analyzed. It should be in a museum.
Right, right. We don't even need to analyze it.
Work of art. The form and function of this projection is just fascinating.
That women get offended when men make observations from a male perspective that they wish did not happen. So when I say something like women vote for stupid interpersonal trash, the rational response is not F you, Tim Pool, don't talk about women that way. It's, well, I'd phrase it less harshly, but women prefer social issues over logistical issues. Men prefer hearing about objective, straightforward. Women love hearing about the personal. So it's subjective versus objective.
Which is why you bitch about Candace Owens all the time.
I mean, what is this now? They're just upset about their audiences. Okay, we got to get
to some.
Okay.
This is a longer clip. So
Okay.
This is not a wrong statement. It's offensive to women, not on the merits, on the intention, on the emotion.
I got it, yeah. If it was a psychologist making this statement, it would say women tend to. That would be the only difference in the statement.
No, it wouldn't.
It's a tendency, basically.
It would, if it was written by a psychologist, it would say, as a voting bloc, women vote for issues of social importance.
Yeah, there would be like
They vote for interpersonal issues and cultural issues as opposed to objective functioning of society.
I mean, it would you would make sure that they know it's a
The entire Republican Party voted on a cultural issue about trans people. That is what we were told. Like his entire ideology is a function of like cultural issues. And the idea that like women vote on based upon interpersonal issues, like what does that even mean? Like they have to know the candidate, or is he saying like they just care about stuff like childcare or parental leave, like actual material things, but
emotional stuff like that.
God.
issues of social importance.
Yeah, there would be like a as a
They vote
voting
for
bloc.
interpersonal issues and cultural issues as opposed to objective functioning of society.
I mean, it would be you would make sure that they know it's a tendency and not a hard.
No, that's not
truth.
correct.
Well, not all women do what you say they do. So that
Ian,
is not true
do you
for
need the
all
card?
women.
Do you need the card, Ian? I made those cards for you because of exactly what you're saying right now.
You said at the top that it's a generalization.
Ian, for the love of all that is holy, I literally just made a whole joke tirade about how people who respond to macro level politics with anecdotes are low IQ.
I know, and that doesn't.
And then
make
you
it true.
just said it.
Yeah, funny doesn't mean that your joke is true.
It's a fact.
Wait, can we pause,
but
just go back for because he went off the screen briefly when he screamed, and I just want to make sure we get the
Also, let's be clear. Ian is absolutely right here.
Yes.
That Tim Pool said, like, well, maybe maybe 30 or 40% women it just doesn't apply to, and so Ian is just saying you need to correct yourself to make it in line with the way that you've retreated now that Media Matters has called you out about this. I mean, putting aside whether there's any evidence that 60% of women vote on interpersonal reasons, I don't know what the fuck that even means.
But Ian is doing what Tim says that he is doing, which is he's trying to be accurate with language and rational, and says it's a tendency, which with Tim's own made-up statistics, that's
now just getting incredibly emotional about it.
And before that, he was saying how Candace doesn't use words correctly, and this is his co-host trying to get him to use words correctly, and he's not.
Tim is
getting
acting like he keeps saying macro statistics. He made a generalization. Just because he put a horseshit percentage on it doesn't make it any less of a generalization.
Yeah.
Tendency and not a hard.
No, that's not correct.
Well, not all women do what you say they do. So that
Ian,
is not true
do you
for
need
all
the card?
women.
Do you need the card, Ian? I made those cards for you because of exactly what you're saying right now.
You said at the top that it's a generalization.
Ian, for the love of all that is holy, I literally just
Stop
made a
making
whole
me
joke
look like an
tirade
idiot.
about how people who respond to macro level politics with anecdotes are low IQ.
I know, and that doesn't.
And then
make
you
it true.
just said it.
Yeah, funny doesn't mean that your joke is true.
It's a fact.
Okay, but I didn't use an anecdote either.
Anecdotal evidence is saying not all women.
No,
Macro level.
Anecdote would be like, I know a girl and she's not. That would be an
Macro
anecdote.
level statistics don't need qualifiers.
Wait, that's
Bro,
not.
I'm saying you're
I'm
claiming
sorry, that's not anecdotal evidence.
I think Timmy needs some
Ian
chocolate
knows
in a hot water bottle.
Tim does not know what anecdotal evidence means. It is
Or what
fascinating.
macro. What is
Statistics?
macro statistics? Like, Tim, you haven't provided any of that.
Yeah, he's made a macro generalization, and
Which he classified as a joke, by the way.
that was based upon probably his own anecdotal experiences.
And what it's really based on is Candace Owens is getting clicks from a lot of women, and he's jealous about that.
Yes, and once
That's all this
again,
is.
it's about
And now-
freaking audiences.
And now he's mad that that Ian is embarrassing him on his own show. And
With logic.
with logic.
Women are going to love this episode.
About how people who respond to macro level politics with anecdotes are low IQ.
I know, and that doesn't.
And then
make
you
it true.
just said it.
Yeah, funny doesn't mean that your joke is true.
It's a fact.
Or funny.
Okay, but I didn't use an anecdote either.
Anecdotal evidence is saying not all women. Macro level.
Anecdote would be like, I know a girl and she's not. That would be an
Macro
anecdote.
level statistics don't need qualifiers.
Bro, I'm saying you're claiming a generalization, and you didn't tell people that was a generalization in your statement.
Can someone help?
I don't know what to
please? My
say.
God.
Like,
There is no help. I hear this
Fighting
stuff all the
cards,
time.
no
You just got to sit back and enjoy the ride.
yeah, there is no argument.
Anyway,
Sit back.
Ian, I'm a guest here. I'm trying not to break anything.
This is the best part about the day.
That just fucking kills me.
There's some funny stuff we don't have time for where George Santos says, like, actually the real problem is Republicans, straight men don't know how to talk to women, and he's the only Republican that can, like, break 50% with them because he, like, compliments them on their nails. But
Yeah. I don't know if I would trust George Santos to be a woke gay man protecting our rights. He might be one of those gay men that are just like misogynists.
He's busy scamming like kill shelters.
Right,
and things.
right. Yeah.
All right. We got to go.
I think that's
enough,
good.
yeah.
By the way, can I just say that the handing out the card is That's Bill Engvall's bit from Blue Collar Comedy Tour, where he says, if you're stupid, his catchphrase is, here's your sign. And he just changed the sign to card. So he's stealing from Blue Collar Comedy Tour.
Macro level politics. I'm doing macro level politics. Okay, I'm like a super army soldier.
Made up a word.
What does that mean?
Macro level politics. You
Oh.
wouldn't get it.
I wouldn't expect you to know, Emma.
Right.
Here's your card, Emma.
Oh my God.
Don't make me give you the card.
We need to
John
do
from
macro level
T-Bird.
politics T-shirts.
I'm sorry, all jokes about Tim Pool being a dumb, hypocritical bitch aside, the fact that these a-holes are so freely slinging the R word is atrocious. And Tim commenting briefly on Blake Lively discourse, such as females' thing to do, when all we heard about from the right-wing grifter sphere for an entire year was their AstroTurf hate campaign to smear Amber Heard, an abuse victim, is just constant reinforcement that these are just plainly bad people. Tequila Willie. Emma, hydration is clearly a bourgeois girl boss status signal. Left is rage. I wish they would stop with the R word every sentence. Urban's wank. Snake's got a snake. And I'll read two more. Genova Witness. I'm not reading the Bible anymore. I'm going to follow the teachings of a Jewish carpenter who wants to change the world and help people and to also plant apples for some reason. And the final I am of the day, Kylek. Oh my God, the fake version of the violence up for Pulp Fiction. I don't know that, Matt, but folks, your support makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. When you do, you not only get the free show free of commercials, but you also get the fun half. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, hot chocolate. Use the coupon code MAJORITY. You get 10% off. It's a co-op, and they have a Majority Report blend, so do it now. Matt, what's happening on the Matt Lackey Media universe?
Oh, yeah. There's going to be a new Jacobin show tomorrow with Grace Blakely. Go subscribe to Jacobin Meg YouTube channel. Also, follow my Instagram at Matt Leck, where I am closing in on 10,000 followers.
Whoa. Matt, Brian, Emma, great job today. Folks, see you tomorrow.